It's the right night down, like
You? Oh, gee.
I'm not saying it yet. We're good.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Manlius Board meeting. Councilor Waters, would you lead us in the pledge?
Sure. Thank you, Senator. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I only ask out of courtesy, any of the young kids, like when you're on a bus and an elderly person walks in and you get up and give them your seat. Maybe if any of you younger kids could give an elder person like myself a seat, that would be really great. So, and then we'll get the ball started here. There we go. We got a couple over there.
All right here.
Does anyone want to sit down? There's something.
Also, there is some overflow in the down the hall. If I don't remember how many seats we have, Jack. About 10. I mean.
And it does have video.
And it does have video, yes. And I'm sure once we're done with the public hearing, it might not be this crowded. I'm just thinking. So, thank you, Heather, for the Pledge of Allegiance. This evening, you know, my town manager and town clerk tell me I don't use this enough, and I really don't want to use it a lot, you know. So I'll just ask you to try to keep the speaking down a little bit amongst yourselves so that we can have our board meeting. If anyone is ever interested about conducting public meetings, you can go to the comptroller's website and you can learn all about how these meetings are for the board and the public can attend. They're not normally need to participate, except we do have rules of the decorum that allow that when we have open podium and when we have a public hearing, which we will have tonight. So that's when you'll all get a chance, or those of you who are on the list to speak, will get a chance to talk. So, and I'll go through all those rules when we get there. So first, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping here. And we are going to pass on the open podium this evening, only because we'll have a big open podium with the public hearing this evening. So with that, we'll move on to item 4, which is approval of the minutes of 7/14/21.
Mr. Supervisor, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for July 14th.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any comments or anything? Okay, carried. Very good. Next, we have number 5 is the approval of abstract number 14.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to move approval of abstract 14 in the amount of $367,042.01. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Very good. All right. Now comes the exciting part. We'll move on to item 6, which is the 6:35.
Right on time.
Oh, okay, yeah. Before we do the public hearing, our attorney will go through the seeker process.
Did we want to go around and introduce ourselves? We can do that like we normally do. So that everyone in the room knows like who the town attorney is and everything, or do we just want to?
We have the nameplates down, and we're not doing the, Hollywood Squares anymore, so I'm just saying. You know.
All right, no, that's fine.
All right, and
I thought it might be helpful, but if you don't want to, we don't have to.
here we are. All right, so with that, Tim, go ahead. Okay.
So before we open the public hearing, we need to fulfill our responsibility under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. So if somebody wants to make a motion to declare the town board the lead agency for this local law, the moratorium local law.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Very good.
And we'll recognize for the record that this is an unlisted action under seeker. So we're gonna-
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed and carried. Very good. So
part one has been filled out by me. And now it's your responsibility to go through part two to determine whether or not this moratorium will have a significant environmental impact. 6-month moratorium that we're considering tonight. Okay. So the first question, first of the 11 questions you'll be considering is, will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulation? I'm assuming all of the answers will be no or small impact unless I hear differently. So on that one, it's a 6-month moratorium and therefore no or small impacts. Everybody agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of the use of land? No. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of an existing community? Again, it's a 6-month moratorium. So these questions are probably not most appropriate for this. Will it have an impact on a critical environmental area? The answer to that is no. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure or mass transit, biking, or walkways?
No.
No. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonable available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? Interesting question, considering we're doing the moratorium on the renewable energy. But again, we have a law in place. This is going to suspend that law for 6 months if that is what the court chooses to do. Right. So again, no to small impact.
Yeah, no.
Will the proposed action impact existing public, private water supplies? No.
No.
Public, private wastewater treatment utilities?
No.
No. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources?
No.
No. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna?
No.
No. Will the proposed action result in an increase in potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? No. The last question is, will the proposed action create a hazard to environment or human resources or health? No. So based upon the 11 questions that were answered, all either no or small impact, that the moratorium will not have a significant environmental impact on our community, I would recommend a negative declaration under C.
I'll make a motion for a negative declaration. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Very good.
So now,
May I just interrupt and say, I know that we, it's important that we hear each other, but there's so many people here. Can we just really project so that other folks can hear us? Thank you.
And talk to the owl.
Yeah.
Oh, and talk to the owl as well,
Yeah.
exactly.
I'm having trouble hearing and I'm like 3 feet away from you guys. So.
did I do a poor job?
No, you're just a quiet person. It's okay.
Nobody's ever said that about me.
A lot of people that.
Very melodic tone.
So now we're in a position to, since we've done the State Environmental Quality Review Act review of this project, we're in a position where we can open the public hearing or go through the process of the public hearing.
Yes, I thought Tim, as an overview, since many of the people weren't here at the last meeting when we discussed the moratorium, maybe you could just highlight a couple of information on the moratorium, if you could, and then we can address those things.
Sure. As you all know, at the last meeting, we reviewed the local law for the moratorium. It's a 6-month moratorium. It affects all projects that have not been approved by the planning board for a special permit or a site plan for by the planning board. So all of those that have already been approved for site plan or for special permits would not be affected by this moratorium. They would go through, I think we have 4, if I'm not mistaken, that have been approved. This will allow for some modifications of those 4 if they are insignificant modifications. They don't expand. So we're not anticipating any of that. There are exceptions of this for those. for home uses, people who would want to put a solar panel on their house that would not be affected by this. And there's also an exception for the lease that we have entered into with Abundant Energy for the landfill.
Correct.
So those are the projects that would be exempted from the moratorium. Otherwise, it's a 6-month moratorium, and the purpose is to review the existing local law and to determine whether or not changes need to be made to the existing local law, and also to consider the impact of solar farms on the comprehensive plan, which is now in the process of being developed. So I think the town felt it was important to consider a pause on the development of solar farms, since we've had a significant number of those applications in the town in the last year. And this is one way to put that pause in place.
Very good. Thank you, Tim. Any of the board have any comments before I open the public hearing?
Motion to waive the meeting.
Oh, I do have a.
Oh, go
Yeah, I
ahead.
had something I wanted to say, but John, you.
But basically too, Tim, thank you for the overview, but I think it's important to remind everybody too, it's up to 6 months, that we can roll that back when needed, if needed, earlier. And I know Sarah's been working really hard, along with members of the planning board, to make sure that we are already getting to the work that we want to get done during the moratorium. So that ball is rolling, and it's not lost on us that we want to get it right, but we also do understand the urgency of it. And so just wanted to call that out for everybody, that, we're not waiting for the moratorium to happen to start doing the work. We're already reaching out to every resource we have, reaching out to the county, doing everything we can.
Very good.
Right.
Yeah, could you-
Yes, thank you, Supervisor. So I wanted to mention some of the thought processes behind why we're considering the moratorium. As we were going over and reviewing all the different projects that were coming forward, and we were hearing from members of the community who wanted our solar policies that we have in the town and the way that the planning board is reviewing projects to be more thorough. The planning board was saying that they had a lot of questions about how these projects are moving forward, what are the things they should and shouldn't consider. There were a lot of unanswered questions, and I did not want to do a solar moratorium. I made that pretty clear in the last board meeting that I was in. I felt that we could address all of these things in quick order, but I did ask, after thinking about it a little bit more, I did ask our town attorney to draft this law and to look at 6 months, because I wanted to give us the opportunity to review all of these different things that are before us. I'm really looking forward to hearing from everyone in the community this evening, both the people who are pro renewable energy, who are working so hard to fight against climate change, as well as those who don't want these projects in our community or in their backyard. So I'm looking forward to hearing from everyone what their thoughts are on this moratorium so that we can better make this decision.
Very good, thank you. Anybody else? Good. Yes,
I just wanted to ask, Caitlin, I know that there are some really practical things we've talked about that are things the planning board could work on. I was thinking about the barbed wire example. Do you mind sharing that with us and reminding us what the planning board needs to do on that?
Yeah,
front?
I actually have the list right in front of me. I pulled it up before I started talking, so thank you for asking. So the first thing that we want to be looking at is our town code that would consider things like a requirement for barbed wire. So certainly something that we've already been told we don't need anymore. So that's something that we could change. But you'll see this list kind of start to grow. All these different little things we have to do start to add up. The town of Pompey just did an overlay, which would be really interesting. And our colleague from the planning board, Chris Merrick, is here tonight, so he would be able to help us to do that. A solar study. Sarah and I are on a committee with the planning board, and we are anticipating being able to, again, work with our colleagues at the planning board to determine where could we source solar. There are all these different hoops that developers have to jump through. You can't just put it in any open field. It doesn't work like that. Where can it go? Perhaps there are sites that would be more advantageous or suitable for a commercial solar project. We have other towns nearby, the town of Cazenovia, other towns to the north of us who have put forward their own solar moratoriums. What are they doing? Learning from their best practices. We wouldn't want to necessarily rush this without having had those conversations. state leadership, the DEC, NYSERDA, the Public Service Commission. What are their best practices and guidance on this topic? What could they share with us? And that was one of the requests from the planning board, getting that information from NYSERDA. And we did have a representative from NYSERDA already come and present. So as John mentioned, we're already working on this. Subdividing, is that something we can or cannot do? We got some more information on that. OSIDA, meeting with the other stakeholders in our community. That meeting is coming up next week. That's the Onondaga County Industrial Development Agency, working with them on pilot agreements, which is a payment in lieu of taxes agreement. It's what helps the town to make sure that these projects are profitable. And then certainly, and of course, comprehensive planning. How does this fit in with the overall plan for the town? And then there's more. So when you add all those things up, nothing we can do in a week. So let's buy ourselves a little bit of time, and we'll hear from the community on if this is something that they want. Do they want us to have a solar moratorium or no?
Thank you. And one last thing I would like to add is that in 2016, we had a number of solar farms come to us way back then, which was not that long ago, but it seems like it was. And we did at that time write our first codes and zoning laws on solar. So that was in its infant stages, you might say. So we have come a long way since then. And so it certainly makes sense to let's step back a little bit and really take a look at all the things that you mentioned, Caitlin, as well as your questions and your comments too, John. So
Do we want to invite people in the vestibule? There's a couple of seats my kids left, so they opened up 2 seats.
Right.
And I see some folks who might
Sure.
appreciate a chair,
Yeah.
might not want to stand. If anyone wants to come
Yeah,
in and
there's
sit
2 seats
down
over there. Right.
before we dive in. And there's a couple of seats in the middle, if anyone wants to sit down here. Get a better view of the show, as it were.
And while you're doing that, we need a motion to waive the,
Wait for reading.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Excellent. And again, the only time that anyone will speak is during when we're asked to be up here. So I don't want, yelling from the crowd or questions or that kind of, so be courteous to the individual who is speaking and let them finish. I actually have, well, we can make a motion, I think, to open the public hearing, then I'll go through the rules. Also,
I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing, please.
I'll second the motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. So here's how it works. We have 2 rules we're going to follow. First is the town meeting rules, which we call the rules of decorum behind fact number 2 over here, or fact 3, whichever direction we're going. So just to highlight a couple of things, public hearing, we look at 3 to 5 minutes to speak. I have my timer set for 4, okay, so I'm compromising. If the timer goes off in your mid-sentence, I'm not going to say, hey. So, but please be courteous of that. The public hearing is only for topics of the town, so town business only, so be aware of that. Of course, don't shout out. Fact 2, can you slide just over a little bit more? Don't shout out from the audience, which I already mentioned that. And of course, no personal attacks, no disruptive behavior. And that would be just the normal courtesy that I know all of you will show. So with that, we have, Alice, and you have a list. You have 2 lists, right? You have
Yeah.
one of people here.
And I need to tell the virtual attendees how to participate as well.
Okay,
So-
and then I have a couple more highlights here.
So everyone, when you're speaking tonight, if you can just speak towards the board and the owl in particular, that's how the virtual attendees at home are gonna hear you. Virtual attendees, if you would like to participate in the public hearing, there are 2 ways that you can do that. You can raise your hand to speak. It's a function at the bottom of the Zoom bar there. So if you mouse over, you should be able to see that. You can additionally enter your comment with your name and address in the Q&A, and then we will read that after everyone has spoken. Per the rules of decorum, though, we do not accept anonymous comments. So you will need to put your name on there, especially if you would like to raise your hand to speak. I won't be transferring anyone into the meeting who doesn't have a first and a last name listed. And if you need help changing that, a simple Google, how do I change my name in Zoom, should give you a quick fix. In-person attendees, we had a sign-in sheet out front to sign in. So you'd sign in on the I'm going to speak section. If you did not do that and you would like to speak, just, the supervisor will call at the end and you can just raise your hand and you'll be called up. If you did sign up to speak and you feel that, and this happens sometimes in large public hearings, you feel that the things that you wanted to say have been said, we recommend that you just stand up and you simply state your name, and that if you are opposed or if you are in support of the solar moratorium, so you just say Allison Weber, Manlius, and I feel this way or that way about it, and then you can sit back down. That way your voice is heard, but you're not necessarily feeling like you're repeating if that is what you choose to do. So.
Thank you, Allison. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Mr. Supervisor,
Yes.
let me just say one more thing.
Sure.
Just so everybody's expectation is understood. The board will not be voting tonight on the moratorium. We have not heard back from Onondaga County. They have 30 days to get back to us from our referral. So we have not heard back from the county planning board, and we cannot make a decision tonight because of it. I suspect we will close the public hearing tonight, but there will be no vote taken on the moratorium tonight.
Thank you, Tim. So with that, Allison, we can start with the first person.
Sure. Casey Cleary Hammerstadt.
Good evening, everyone, and I especially want to welcome the young people, because it's for you that we have to do this work, and it's for you, we owe this to you. My name is Casey Cleary. My address is 113 Kessler Lane in the village of Fayetteville. I've lived in central New York for 45 years, 22 of them in the town of Manlius. My first 4 years were in the village of Manlius, and the last 18 years have been in the village of Fayetteville. My two daughters, one of whom is here tonight, are graduates of the FM school district. I believe the planning board was very wise to request a moratorium on reviewing solar farm applications, and that the town board would be wise to adopt it unanimously. I'm not an expert, I'm a citizen, and I wanted to try to figure out what I could add tonight, because I know a lot of people know a lot more. What I was thinking about is, what happens when the moratorium passes? Caitlin, you did address some of this. What then? How can we make the best use of the next 6 months? How might we direct our sense of urgency, our passion for this issue, our knowledge, our beliefs, and our questions in order to rise to the challenge that the climate emergency presents for every community? How might we bring our best thinking to the table in order to become the climate smart community that the time demands? After reviewing the minutes of the planning board and town board, the letters to the editors, and other documents circulated in the past month, I notice there is common ground. We have a desire to make the best decisions that we can for future generations, regardless of our positions. We have a desire to have a comprehensive plan that does what we needed to do in this town, and never before have we probably been in greater agreement on the importance of that comprehensive plan. But we are not on common ground when it comes to information and scientific facts. Simply put, developers make claims. Solar farm proponents make claims. Solar farm opponents make claims. And everyone is talking past each other. The planning board and the town board are not in a position to evaluate all of those claims that are batted around in public hearings and the emails. We need to do better as a community than to just choose a set of claims. We need the highest quality information available to guide us. Future people require we make the most informed decisions possible at this moment in time. Since the moratorium timeline and the comprehensive plan timeline do not align perfectly, I suggest we consider an additional step during the moratorium that would serve the work of our comprehensive plan working groups as well as our Sustainable Manlius Committee. And I'd like to just build on what Caitlin said. You're gathering lots of information, but from the public perspective, we need access to the best information. So I recommend that we create a solar farm repository of the best information on this topic available on our website. I checked, and that is possible. And and staff is perhaps even willing, that they can put that repository on our website linked to the relevant committees. How might that work? Evaluating information is a science. We would have to agree on criteria, and that would be important. But there is a lot of information that is not necessarily backed in science or backed in other reliable information. And we are going to notice that there are gaps in the information that we have. But if we could start from the place of looking at the same things together in time, I think we'd be better served.
You're okay.
Really?
You're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
You're ramping it up.
So, you know, I don't want to put more work on
No,
anyone.
you're good. You're good. Keep going.
Okay, good. I don't want to put more work on anyone who's already working so hard. So I do know that we have some American Rescue Plan money, and American Rescue is what we're talking about. Perhaps we could hire objective teams of librarians who are information masters and content experts who could tackle compiling the best objective evidence for us on the issues of greatest concern to our citizens, and especially those who have raised concerns recently. Those issues that have been raised are the known health effects on different age populations of living in a close radius to a solar farm, the impact on land and groundwater of solar farms, what chemicals and other materials do solar panels shed or come from that leach over time, including whether there are some solar panels that are more or less likely to leach, the impact on property values, the best practices in minimizing the impact on wildlife, the best practices in landscaping approaches to screening on the type of land that we have here, and lessons from climate smart communities. If this idea seems worthy of consideration, I'm happy to flesh it out. It's similar to what's done in medicine, for instance, and we can develop tools to help us evaluate that information and share it with each other. Let us take the time to become as well informed as we can. Let us fulfill our obligations to future generations. Let us empower our planning board and town board with facts, research, and a citizenry that insists on evidence-based decision-making.
You told me you hadn't done this before. I think you did pretty good. Nice job. Thank you. And it's okay to clap. Okay.
I'm gonna do my very best with names
And,
and handwriting. So Anna Lena Davis. That's good. Did I get it right? Okay.
So I'm Anna Lena Davis, but whatever, not a big deal. I live at 313 Brooklyn Drive. The town of Manlius has an opportunity here to be part of the solution and not yet another roadblock. Our changing climate threatens our way of life. We are an affluent area. We enjoy our cars, our large homes. We enjoy our gadgets and our trips to warmer weather, if we're honest. And renewable energy helps us to continue to enjoy those things. It's gonna stop trying to look at you guys because I just have to read it.
oh, that's fine.
Look, I'm hoping that when I retire, I can continue to enjoy those things. And I hope that my kids can live a similar lifestyle as they grow older. But this isn't about my kids. This is about my experience living in Manlius. I have taken many steps to reduce my family's footprint. We insulated our 100-year-old house and had a heat pump installed last year. And now the only thing left using natural gas is our water heater. My husband and I bike to work when we can using the canal trail right behind our house. We bought our house here because of that canal trail. We have an electric car and a hybrid car, and for over 6 years, we've been buying wind energy from a national company. Several years ago, we tried to get solar panels on our house, but it's not a good candidate for solar. So I tried signing up for local community solar, but the project kept getting delayed. And finally, after a year of delays, I decided to jump ship and try another project. Even with my environmental mindset, I lost my patience. I plan to try again, but what about others who are not as determined? The planning board should review these projects to make sure they meet local guidelines, just like any other development project in town, but we also need to remove roadblocks that continue to delay these projects over and over again. We have very limited time, time, about 9 years now, to get as much renewable built as we can. We need to be sourcing more renewable energy locally and lead the renewable energy at the national scale for those who live in states that aren't taking the steps that New York is. The town board has an opportunity to guide the planning board by streamlining the process for approving solar projects. Please be a part of the solution and not yet another roadblock for all of us who live in this town and want to continue to live the lifestyles that we do, and for our kids.
And Brian Dunn, you need to make.
That was 2 minutes under the limit. Yeah, so I put it at 5.
Good evening. I support the town's moratorium, but I also want to be very clear that I hope that the two proposals with the solar farms go ahead. My name's Peter Worth. I've lived in Fayetteville for 20 years, in Syracuse since 1971. I'm speaking on behalf of climate change awareness and action members living in the town of Manlius. I'm glad to see so many young people here today, because decisions we make today will determine the world they live in. I hope we can remind ourselves of that when we think of our own self-interests. I attended the meeting a few weeks ago and listened to the concerns of those in opposition to the two proposed solar farms. I want to address two issues in particular, the issue of heavy metals and the use of farmland. But before that, the issue I hope we can all agree on is the reality and seriousness of climate change. My father taught biochemistry at St. John's in Queens. I grew up in a family that believed in and respected science. Scientific America, one of the many magazines Dad subscribed to, was often on our living room table. The science behind climate change dates back over 150 years when a local scientist, a woman from Seneca Falls, discovered that if you increase the concentration of carbon dioxide, the temperature rises. Do that experiment 1,000 times, you get the same results. Mainly due to the burning of fossil fuels, the CO2 concentration, which was about 280 parts per million at the start of the Industrial Revolution, today is 420 parts per million and rising.
Okay, could you repeat those two figures?
280 parts per million at the start of the Industrial Revolution, and today it's 420 parts per million. The planet is warming and weather systems are destabilizing. We left a stable climate that for the last 10,000 years enabled civilization to flourish. We are in uncharted waters. So in the last 3 weeks, since the last public meeting, we had a storm in Germany that dropped 2 months of rain in 2 days. Over 200 people drowned. They referred to it as a once in a 1,000-year flood. A few weeks later, a major city in China received a year's worth of rain in 1 day, and people died in flooded subway stations. In the US, we had an unprecedented heat wave in the Northwest, with temperatures 30 degrees above average. An article in the Washington Post stated hundreds of people died as a result of a heat dome and caused thousands of emergency calls and hospital visits. Scientists and public officials attributed the historic heat wave to climate change and the worst drought in modern history. As I speak, wildfires in California, Oregon, and the state of Washington have burnt 1.5 million acres. And the worst of the fire season is yet to come. This is climate change at work. This is the world we are leaving for the young people in this audience to deal with. I want to briefly address the issues I mentioned as they are distractions from the issue of solar farm approval. Solar panels will not leach heavy metals into the water table. Cadmium solar panels are illegal in New York State, and panels with lead would have to be ground up into dust to leach out the heavy metals. Our cell phones, our laptop computers, our flat screen TVs, and cars all contain a variety of heavy metals and toxic substances. If you are that concerned about heavy metal contamination, I suggest you don't use any of these items. Farmland. The major factors affecting farmland are suburban sprawl and commercial development, with accompanying infrastructure such as roads, power, sewer, and gas lines. Sunday's paper had an article about the town of Clay, which is helping purchase 1,250 acres for commercial development for a chip manufacturing plant. Solar farms can help farms and help farmers. Solar farms can help small family farms by enabling them to generate a revenue stream from part of their land. Solar farms can act as land banks, ensuring that 30 years down the line, when you take the panels off, it'll still be a farm field. Solar farms can improve the quality of the soil and water by planting deep-rooted perennial grasses that build healthier soil, improve biodiversity, and increase water quality. John, could you put up actually?
Allison, can you just promote me in the Zoom?
Solar farms
It was 5 minutes, just so you
can
know.
be used as livestock feed areas, such as the one in,
Working on it.
happened.
it's not happening, or it is?
No, it is not.
It is. Oh, hold on.
There we go.
There it is.
Oh,
Oh,
And it's gone.
that's the chicken.
It's a very fast shape.
There we go. Sorry, they're gonna chicken.
They should be like.
Yeah, those are
Solar farms can be used as livestock feed areas such as the one in Chattanooga, West Virginia, where 50 sheep help to restore the land while keeping vegetation from shading the solar panels. Solar farms can be used to increase production in adjoining agricultural land and farm orchards by planting pollinator species for bees. Solar farms are green. I hope we can all work together for the generation after us and produce the best solar farms in upstate New York. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a reminder, everybody, I don't know if you all saw that with your cell phones. I know I have mine on vibrate, so if you could just put all yours, just in case you get one of those calls, and that would be helpful. Thanks. Go ahead, and this is not for that.
Ryan Dunn.
Ryan, welcome.
Hi, my name is Ryan Dunn. I live on 175 Brookside Lane, Fayetteville, New York. And I'm also the community chair of Sustainable Manlius. I support the moratorium, but I also do want to stress that we don't have a lot of time and we really need to get these projects underway. We are lucky to live in the town of Manlius. We have access to clean water, clean air, and plentiful green spaces. And I'm grateful for this. We are privileged enough that most of us don't have to worry about the climate crisis because it doesn't have a huge impact on our day-to-day lives. It would be very easy to ignore it and fall back into the rhythm of your daily lives and responsibilities. However, I don't believe it's ethical to do so. With our privilege comes responsibility. Around the world, there are people struggling to get food on the table, to find access to electricity, and who are dealing with immediate crises just to stay alive. These are also the people who will be impacted most by the climate crisis, and they don't have the capacity or power to address it alone. That's why I'm here today. The town of Manlius has an opportunity to be a part of the solution of climate change by saying yes to solar. In fact, it is our duty to do so. Solar is a clean source of energy that is a much better alternative to fossil fuels, which can emit harmful chemicals such as carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrogen oxides. We have to recognize our privilege and do what we can to address the climate crisis. I'm grateful for everything that the town board, everything the town board has done as far as to encourage sustainability in Manlius by passing the unified solar permit, incorporating sustainability into the conversation of the comprehensive plan, and by becoming a clean energy community and working on the Climate Smart Communities program. I hope to see the town board continue to support sustainability in Manlius by supporting these solar projects, and I hope that they know we support them in doing so. Climate change is real, and Manlius wants to be a part of the solution.
And again, I just want to ask those, try to keep any conversations where we can't hear you. So Probably don't talk.
Even if you're whispering, we can hear
Yeah, it's
the words
really-
you're
it
saying.
carries.
Like,
It really does
it
carry.
carries in this room, so we literally hear all the words you're saying.
So,
Before we all call up the next speaker, I'd just like to bring attention to the work Ryan has personally done.
Oh.
He was the person who came to the town of Manlius and recommended become a climate smart community
oh,
and helped to get us to apply. Without his efforts, we would not have done so. So even as Ryan is thanking us for our leadership on climate action, I would like the board to extend its appreciation to Ryan for his leadership on climate action in our community. He's done a fantastic job, so thank you. Here it is.
you're up, Bill. How about you're not up? But the next person is.
Maya Charm, did I get that right? I can't tell.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell, I'm sorry. You got it.
Can you repeat your name then?
Maya Shaker.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes, I did see that name. Very good. Thank you. Yeah, you can. We can hear you better. Thank you.
So, hello, my name is Maya Chicken. I live at 330 Hybrid Street, Fayetteville, New York. And I am representing the 30-plus youth here tonight, in addition to 24 who cannot be here. So you may be asking yourself, what could possibly cause some 30 teens to take a night out of their summer vacation, others weeks, to research, organize, and demonstrate? Well, we are a generation who is terrified of what our future will look like. And no, I am not dramatizing this. The terrifying effects of climate change are obvious. We see them on the news every day. Just last week, the flooding in Germany and Belgium took over 200 lives and destroyed hundreds of homes. As of earlier today, the National Interagency Fire Center was watching 81 fires across 12 states. Out of these 81 active fires, only 4 have been contained. I've seen the smoke spread from the California skies behind my aunt and uncle on our family Zoom calls to the skies right outside my window, soiling our air quality and blocking out the sun. And climate change has not just reached Manlius with the smoke. We are facing our own destructive climate challenges. Tick populations in central New York have skyrocketed due to the effects of climate change. The warmer winters and springs have expanded tick season. And this increase in ticks has caused an increase in diseases such as Lyme, which is something that I'm sure you are all very familiar with. And it is something that I have become very familiar with ever since my dad was diagnosed with it about a year ago. It has become impossible for me to separate myself from the climate crisis, to see it as some far away in the future problem as I watch my dad struggle with the effects of this disease right here at home in Manlius. Now, I have heard fears from some that the proposed solar farms will destroy the beautiful nature of Manlius that you want us young people to inherit, but our ability to enjoy the nature here is already being destroyed. We aren't going to want to enjoy the outdoors if we are breathing in dangerously polluted air or contracting a chronic debilitating disease like Lyme. These issues are only going to get worse if we don't do something now. We don't have the time to find the perfect location for this solar project when a perfect location might not even exist. Do we really want to prioritize aesthetic concerns over the safety of our future? Do we really want to sit back while these crises worsen and increase and become the new normal? Do we really want to sacrifice this opportunity to be a part of the solution rather than the problem? Because I don't. The young people here with me today don't. And when it comes down to it, I don't think anyone in this room wants that. So we are asking you to help us to fight climate change within our community. Because if we want to have even the smallest chance of preserving our future, every community will have to pitch in and support green renewable energy, including ours. So let's do our part and become a community who looks towards the future, one that is better, safer, and more environmentally stable for everyone. Now, counselors, I recognize the difficult situation you're in when it comes to this decision. I also recognize the work that you've done to support the environment, and I thank you for that. I trust that you will hear all of the concerns on both sides of this issue tonight and work to create a plan for solar and Manlius that we can all be proud of. For your time.
Well, Chris, hold on just a second. We've had 5 speakers that have covered a lot. And some of it has been repetitive, but, you know, we've heard about the climate change a few times. So if we don't, and I know, Chris, it's different for you. But if there are any speakers that are just going to repeat some of the things we just said, as Allison said, stand up, identify yourself, and just say, I'm for, I'm against, you guys are doing a great job, or you're not, whatever, you know, if you could do that. But thank you very much, everyone. Everyone's doing a great job. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Supervisor. Thank you, counselors. Thanks to everyone who came out tonight. A lot of what I was going to say has been said, so I will keep it brief. I manage the energy program at the Central New York Regional Planning and Development Board. I've been working on clean energy issues for 25 years at this point. I've been on the planning board for 13 years, I'm working on solar issues here in New York. That time, I'm pleased to work with the town and a number of energy issues that have been talked about tonight: clean energy communities, climate smart communities, again, sustainable Manlius campaign. And it's really so important when a municipality steps up to take a leadership role in that way, because whatever happens in Albany or Washington or in the United Nations, it comes down to local action at the end of the day. We have to install solar house by house, community by community, no matter what the policies or incentives are at the state and federal level. It comes down to local action, and because municipalities have that local authority, it really falls to you to make these decisions. So I just want to reemphasize, solar can be a good neighbor when built responsibly. It does not produce noise or fumes or glare. It doesn't produce extra traffic. It doesn't increase demand on public services. It does not leach toxic materials into the water. And in most cases, it has no impact on property values, despite what some may believe. On the other side, it does generate revenue for property owners, as has been said, and for the town through pilot agreements or taxes. It does create jobs. In fact, solar is the fastest growing job creator in the country. So we have a bright future in store for us if we can get the local policy right, and that's what we're here tonight for. The good news is that we have all of the tools that we need already in place. Most of what you will be considering in your amending your solar law are all of the typical tools that are used. Maximum height, standard setbacks from property lines, screening requirements, especially if they also require an independent landscape architect analysis, a stamped landscape plan, so that we know that the soils can support the landscape vegetation. So with the possible exception of decommissioning, which is somewhat unique to solar, there's really not much new than what the town has done for decades. And when it comes to decommissioning, we already have NYSERDA guidance, or the town could do what Palm did, which is to require an independent engineering report, again, a stamped independent engineering report estimate what it would cost in the future decommissioning project. That's required. Councilor Priesel has already mentioned the overlay zoning approach that Pompey took. Teshi worked closely with the town of Pompey committee on developing that, so you're in good hands there. Our office is compiling an inventory of municipal solar zoning laws. We've already looked at about 24 of them to look at what are some of the common and differing features. So I think I just want to allay concerns that may exist here on the board or in the community that 6 months really is sufficient, in my view, to create a zoning law that will protect all of the interests and balance the different community interests. We've got a running head start. As the supervisor mentioned, Manlius was one of the first communities in 2016 to create a zoning law, and it's very good for one that was written in 2016. So it's a good starting point. Just in closing, I want to say, just echo the comments that have been made. Time is of the essence. you know, in my 25 years of doing this work, I'm not a scientist, I'm a planner in my profession, but I follow the science for a living. And never once in my professional work have I come across a scientific or government report that has said, oh, you know, things actually aren't as bad as we thought. Every report says, wow, we underestimated how quickly the climate is changing and the magnitude of impacts. So I commend the youth, especially here, for taking the time to participate in this important effort. And, you know, solar faces a lot of headwinds at the state and federal level. NYSERDA incentives are declining and have been exhausted in many cases already. So again, local municipalities are the key. I know it seems overwhelming because the town has received so many applications. And that, you know, could be seen in two ways. One is you're shouldering a burden, a disproportionate burden. It can also be seen as an opportunity. But the fact is, because it's a fairly populated, built-up area, but has some open space, it naturally was going to attract interest from solar developers. I think there have been 4 or 5 proposals in the town. By my view, looking at the recent, you know, what is available on the utility system, we're probably approaching or have approached already the maximum limit of what the town can support. So I just want to allay any concerns of those who may, you know, have worries about solar. The town is not going to be paved over with solar panels. That's just not going to happen. So again, you know, 6 months is sufficient. There are resources. We are prepared, of course, to do our part to assist the committee and Mr. Futesh and you know, I think this is a good time to take a pause. Even though, you know, we are assisting the town in developing its landfill solar. Very pleased that that project has been accepted. And, we look forward to working with you in 6 months.
Can I ask you just a quick question? I was wondering if you might cover it, but you didn't, so if you don't mind. The NYSERDA grants and rebates that the commercial projects get, does passing a solar moratorium put some of those incentives in danger, which might render some of these commercial projects unable to move forward?
It very well may. And I think this was alluded to by one of the developers who was here in planning. When asked the question, the moratorium said it could, because the incentives are available on a first come, first served basis. And if you do not hit your timeline, your milestones, you get pushed to the back of the queue. So, you know, I don't want anyone to be under any illusions. You know, this is a significant step to take. It may jeopardize or even cause some of these projects to not. That being said, I understand the desire to get it right. So I know that's the decision. So,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a train, but I keep hearing a toot over here someplace, and I don't know what it is, but it's getting to.
So Peter, I was in Michelle or Michael or Michael.
And is it Mia? Was it Mia that spoke? Maya, I want to thank you for speaking on behalf of the 25 people that were here. Okay, that they didn't have to get up and talk to you.
I do keep hearing a phone being from over here. If we could all please make sure our phones
Yeah,
are on
yeah, I
silent.
keep hearing it. So, yep, go ahead, sir.
I'm Peter Michael. I live at 185 Brookside Lane in Fayetteville, and I'm speaking in support of solar. I'm a retired architect and a sculptor, and the grandfather of 6, all living in Fayetteville. I'm worried that there is a great risk that they will not have a normal lifespan because of the impacts of planting. As a young man, I studied architecture at MIT and was awarded a European traveling fellowship, which allowed me to see some of the great architectural achievements of the ages. It now pains me that all the great works of art, as well as the advancements of science and beauties of nature, will mean nothing if there are no people around to appreciate them. The chances of this happening are accelerating as we continue business as usual.
For over 30 years, sometimes parallel with my architectural practice, I've been creating colorful public sculptures that symbolize and celebrate community. They can be found in Chicago, Houston, Washington, and Syracuse, among other places. The image on my shirt is one of them. I call it Support Circle Rainbow. And it's now in a children's hospital in Dallas. This symbolizes to me that what can be accomplished when we all support each other. Now, because of my concerns, I have redirected my energies from my heart to learning about what we can do to solve the climate crisis. In the process, I have discovered a great book and organization called Drawdown. They have the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming. You can check out their website, drawdown.org. They have researched the top 80 solutions currently in practice that can accomplish them if we act to accelerate them. Not surprisingly, solar is one of the top solutions. The fact that there are many solutions, however, does not let us off the hook by saying we don't need to rely on solar. We need to act on as many of the solutions as possible and as fast as possible to reverse the devastating impacts of climate change. You might say we don't see impacts in our area because we are privileged to have an abundance of water and a more benign climate. However, there are industries even in here that are noticing the impact. The wine, maple sugar, and skiing industries are examples. But we can see in the news that elsewhere in our country and around the world, the impacts are severe with deadly heat waves. Peter was referring to all these, the floods, droughts, and fire. In addition, the life-threatening heat has an impact on our agricultural workers and thus on our food supply. Still another thing to worry about. Final note about the view. Personally, I love how solar panels look. I get excited as I've traveled in Spain, Belgium, and Germany when I see fields and roofs with solar panels. For me, they are a symbol of our commitment to creating a durable, livable world. I would be proud to live in a town that set an example for others and is a leader in the promotion of climate solutions that include renewable energy and especially solar. If we need the moratorium, I don't really like the idea, but if we need it in order to make these projects work best, then I would support that.
Thank you.
Jane Tretta. Ron, also try to, yeah, I'm gonna get one right, I swear.
And just so you know, I don't start the timer till you get there. Go ahead.
Hello, board, and hello, everyone else. My name is Jane Tretler. I live at 113 Camet Lane, Fayetteville. I have lived in the town of Manlius for 33 years, and I was a school librarian, K to 5, at East Syracuse Manila School District for 30 years, retiring in June of 18. And right now, I am thinking of all of my students, kindergarten through 5th grade, that I had for those many years. I'm thinking about their future. I don't have time, even in retirement, to read the news every morning. But when I am reading the news, I believe it. I believe that the whole East Coast is warmer than it's ever been and getting hotter. I believe that the whole West is also getting hotter. Portland, Oregon reached 116 degrees this summer. The Pacific Northwest broke previous records by over 10 degrees. And Death Valley, California reached 130 degrees this summer, which is the highest temperature ever recorded on Earth. We cannot bury our heads in the sand. It's bad, and it's getting worse. Ezra Klein of Times Opinion recently wrote, "I do not want this to be a column arguing for despair. And I do not want my words tonight to be arguing for despair, but to the immediate question, how to encourage the political system here locally to do enough, fast enough to avert the suffering worldwide that is happening. I don't know the answer. We have to start somewhere. And I know that there are differing views in this room, but the future is renewables, renewable energy, clean energy. There's never been a solar spill. Solar power doesn't heat up the planet. Wind power doesn't heat up the planet. We must move as quickly as we can. I understand that the board needs time to plan very carefully. And of course, we want you to do it right. I understand that there are regulations and codes and zoning laws that I have no idea even what they are. And I love farmland too. My mother grew up on still a dirt road in northwestern Pennsylvania, a very rural area, and I love farmland. And I want farmland to be here for my ESM kids, who are our future. And of course, our FM kids too. I'm just talking about ESM, which is also in the part of the town of Manlius. Please, town of Manlius board, my town, I love it here. I have really found a home in central New York. We need to be part of the solution by developing well-planned, sustainable, renewable energy here as soon as we can. Thank you.
I'm actually gonna call up 3 people because they all have the same last name and they're probably sitting together. So Micah, Mariah, and David Kaczynski. I got it right.
Hi, my name is Micah Kaczynski. I live at 169 Brookside Lane, Fayetteville, and I've lived here my whole life for 20 years.
Speak up just.
So about a year ago, I got my scuba diving license, and I was really excited about that. And I was really excited because I've always wanted to see the beauty of the underwater natural world. Something I've always wanted to do. But in these past couple of years, with the acidification of the ocean and coral bleaching, I've seen that dream slowly start to disappear. And that's something that has really depressed me more than I can say. The oceans are home for up to 80% of all life on Earth. And experts predict that if the world continues at its current fishing rate, there'll be no fish left in the ocean by 2050. All of this is not what I trained or worked so hard for. Scuba diving is not something that's easy to do with anybody who has ever done it. It's a difficult sport. As depressing as this fall is, the truth is we rely on the ocean for so much more than that. Up to 85% of our world's oxygen comes from the phytoplankton in the ocean. Since 1950, there's been a 40% diminishment in phytoplankton that's steadily growing each year by 1% or more. So in essence, if they go, we go. This may seem like a far off statistic, but in reality, it's a lot closer than we think. Coral reefs being bleached, fish being killed, it's all a part of this cataclysmic global decline due to the warming temperatures the experts have been warning us about for years. So in our own way here, I believe that we can turn this around. Creating a solar panel farm is just one way that our little town of Manlius can display its commitment to keeping the oceans beautiful and valuable sustainer of life that they are. And if you're not into snorkeling or diving, I get it, it's not for everybody. It's a very minimal thing, but I just had to speak out my own experience, and that's something that's important to me. And I think putting effort into something that will help sustain that for people who want to appreciate the gifts that the ocean brings is a really important thing, and we should try our hardest to do that.
Hello, my name is Mariah Kaczynski, same address, same village. I've lived in the town of Manlius since I've been 2 years old. I went to the FM school district, and thanks to the incredible teachers that I had there, I was able to go on and pursue a bachelor's and master's degree in education at the College of St. Rose, and I'm now a special education teacher in the Syracuse City School District. Through my experiences now and in the past, being involved in the city of Syracuse, I understand how what we decide in one community has a direct impact on what happens in another community, for better or for worse. One decision that I hope will be on the right side of history on is this solar panel installation. And I care about this because I know that our reliance on fossil fuels is directly harming our children. Because when we burn the fossil fuels, particles and gases are spewed into the air, and the people that are most vulnerable to breathing them in are usually our youngest citizens, whose immune systems and brains are still developing. Their bodies aren't fully protected from breathing irritating or toxic pollutants. And if a pollutant hits cells in their growing brain, when it is time for them to morph into something new, they might not do so correctly or on time. We all know that our brains direct everything that happens with the cells and organs in our body. Therefore, messing up the wiring when it's developing could change how any part of the body might function. One of the organs that's affected is the lungs. And according to the American Lung Association, asthma is the most common chronic condition among children, currently affecting an estimated 6.1 million children under 18 years of age. So the decisions we make have an impact on our children and the children for generations, as we know. We can choose clean energy by saying yes to this solar panel installation. And by choosing that, a solution that's right in front of us, we are also saying yes to our children and their futures. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dave Kaczynski. I live with them at 169 Brookside Lane here. Been here 25 years. And pleased to be in the town of Manlius, Village of Fayetteville. I drove down Do Good Road very, very often and went out Salt Springs Road, where I occasionally have gone over the years for a variety of things. And I glanced at the beauty of the different fields and the property that is under some consideration for the possible solar farm. And I parked by the side of the road for about 5 minutes, different spots, and just looked at how beautiful it was. And all the homes along the road, and perhaps some of you homeowners are here this evening. I think that I looked at the beautiful lawns, gardens, flowers, landscaping. And I could truly understand the pride that people take in their homes, the desire to have that area kept in a certain kind of pristine state. However, I would not call it all a natural state. Someone that have driven that road 30, 50, or 100 years ago may look at those properties and say, what a disaster. What a mess they've made of those beautiful fields. They have them all cut up now. The only thing I'm trying to point out is that change happens and that we have to obviously be constructive in our use of the land and of change. And I think what we're looking for is that the acquisition and development and the stewardship that is so beautiful, and I truly respect it, of the homeowners in these areas. You have demonstrated a commitment to the area. These fields are not the Grand Canyon, and they're not the Half Dome of Yosemite, or one of the other natural wonders of our nation. They are fields that must be developed in different ways with a good amount of temperance and respect, but also for the greater good of all, as long as we're not infringing on others' rights or how they are to be developed for a sense of the common good. And our legacy to generations that follow us deserve consideration at least as much as the present beauty that we seek to preserve, but ironically will fail to preserve if we do not act to develop other means of power and energy. Therefore, without imposition on the ownership of anyone or the property or value or beauty, my hope would be that any property that was to be acquired for a solar farm development would be respectful, but see the whole aspect of our dependence of fossil fuels and the rugged independence that we have cultivated has to be balanced. We have to have an attitude, I'm defeated. I can do something to change this. And that is to preserve the beauty that has been in our area, in our world. I would hope that the town would continue to explore and permit these sites to be bought or leased or developed with solar panels, which would demonstrate your commitment and our commitment to a community to preserving this natural world, which is on the verge of catastrophic climate change. And I don't think I need to itemize that, as the speakers before have done such a fine job. The climate catastrophes occurring throughout the world that nearly every reputable news organization points out that are related to or caused by climate change can be addressed. We all have a responsibility to do something. And this development of a possible solar farm in our little area is our way of doing something. We all want our children and grandchildren to experience the wonders of this world as we have known it. And we can't simply say, this is mine, I have this territory, and I'm going to hang on to it. I do not know if these sites are the best for your solar farm, but they look like they have some possibility. And I believe that this should be zoned as possible sites for development, and that landowners in that area and all of us in the town should take pride in our solution. That what we are doing is seeking the greater good, the common good, and the future for our children and grandchildren. And this is what we must do in our own little area to contribute to this planet. Thank you.
Deborah DeSocio.
I'm Deborah DeSocio. I live at 108 with Nancy Lake, Fayetteville, New York, and I've been here for 22 years. My son went to different schools, and I think this town is really for this, and I hope that we get sustainable future for the town with solar arrays. I'm going to opt out because a lot of what I was going to say was already said, and Thank you, everyone.
Who's the quickest? Congratulations.
Leah,
Right there.
Eve, Jasmine, Nelson.
Up there, right? Like there?
Yeah, it's a little owl.
Yeah, right there, that's the yellow.
Let me just pull this up. It's on my smartphone, like everything is the same. So hi, everybody. My name is Leah Eve Jaser Nelson. I'm 22. I just graduated from Wells College with honors and distinction. And perhaps more prudently to this discussion, I grew up in Manlius. I went to Eagle Hill for middle school, FM for high school, and I have been so fortunate to share in both the joys and sorrows of this area and her people. So, like a lot of you guys, I've come here after a very long day at work. I've been on my feet for the better part of 10 hours. In order to afford a program this upcoming year so that I may teach English to underserved populations in foreign nations, I'm working 40 hours a week as a nanny, 10 hours a day. The days can be long, and the amount of time that I try to get her to take a single sip of soup is ridiculous. But it is such a privilege to learn from the next generation. Kids are really funny, aren't they? They have a way of cutting through to what's truly important. This little girl I care for sees the world in a way that is unburdened by social conventions. She sees no issue with being inconvenienced if it means helping someone else. I am going to try my best to follow in her footsteps tonight. So I'm going to ad-lib a little bit here because you guys have heard all of the evidence. I'm not as well qualified as a lot of these people, so I'll try to cut that short. I've heard a lot of concerns about this proposal. The solar farm is big, it's ugly, it doesn't fit with Manlius, with the beautiful homes and the beautiful people who live in them. It will disrupt nature and the species that inhabit these areas. Do you know what is more disruptive than solar panels? World-ending climate change. In my 22 years of life, I've seen my planet, of which Manlius is but a spot of light, suffer. We have pillaged, plundered, and destroyed the beauty we were given to protect and care for. I won't lie. The farm won't be beautiful. Like so many other human-created technologies, it is big and it is ugly. What it represents, however, is life, beautiful and unique and to be cared for. My question to you is this: have we not taken enough from this world? Have we not shifted the burden of change onto every following generation simply so we can think about it? Have we not the responsibility to shift the tides of climate change in favor of life? I hear talk of disruption to my life. Well over 150,000 people die each year because of climate change. In the 6 months that this moratorium is proposed for, 75,000 people will have died because of avoidable climate change that we caused. We have the great privilege of being some of the very few who are not affected. Don't get too comfortable in your seats, though. That will change, and sooner rather than later. This discussion is not about beauty. It's not about barbed wire. It's not even about us being individuals with rights. It's about responsibility and accountability. We pay money to live in this area, a good deal of it too. We pay money to taxes so our children can attend the best schools. We assume responsibility for our jobs, our homes, and our children. What will the future of your children's lives look like in 20 years? Perhaps some of the people arguing in favor of postponement or even downright opposition have the luxury of knowing their lifespans will not be unduly affected by this tidal wave of catastrophe. I do not. Within the next few decades, I will see the world morph into something out of a horror film. We've already seen the death and destruction we are wreaking on our planet. There is no way now to pretend that we are not entering the 6th mass extinction. And the end of that is total and utter annihilation. So I think it's time we reframe this discussion. Rather than fearing these panels, it is vital that we embrace them as shields and protectors. The devastation that climate change is bringing to our beautiful doorsteps as we speak is far more terrifying and real a threat than the chance of our views being obstructed or the chance that metals will leach into our soil and water, which we've already established doesn't happen. It is irresponsible to lie down and show our bellies to a problem that we created because we are afraid of change that we set into motion. My entire life, and yes, I'm 22, I know I'm still kind of young, I'm working on it. But my entire life, I have heard talk of the future. Leah, be patient. Leah, look to the future. Leah, they'll fix it. Don't worry about it. I hate to say it, but the future is now. We have no window of time left. How dare we think of ourselves as greater than the future of our survival as a species or the survival of our planet? We speak of the disruption to the natural world. Well, look outside. As I drove here today, haze from wildfires thousands of miles away across the continent choked the birds singing in the trees. It disrupted my life.
We are fortunate to live in an area that is so unaffected so far by extreme climate change. Our children can go to school knowing that the air they breathe will not rot their lungs. Your grandkids can look up at the raindrops falling with wonder and awe, not terror, as a tornado comes bearing down on their heads. You and I get to say goodbye to our families each morning as we go to work, safe in the knowledge that we have no dams that could burst and flood our homes and take everything from us. I'm here to tell you that that certainty, that warmth of safety, is fleeing us now. If we are so arrogant as to believe ourselves better than a world-saving measure because we can't look at grass and charming mud puddles, I have very little hope or faith that the older generations will carry mine through or mine to the next. With no work to stop this rolling ball of doom that is headed our way, your children, grandchildren, and all the generations to follow, they will suffer. So I'm going to end up with this little passage from stories that I heard as a child. I don't think anyone will recognize it, but it's about Honi Ha-Me-Agel. And he was a very wise man, but the great thing about his stories is that although he was considered one of the most intelligent men in the world, he understood that he had to look to others for inspiration and for understanding. So there's a story that Honi Ha-Me-Agel once saw in his travels an old man planting a carob tree. Honi stopped and asked him when he thought the tree would bear fruit. After 70 years, was the reply. Do you expect to live 70 years and eat the fruit of your labor? Honi asked. The old man answered, I did not find the world desolate when I entered it, and as my fathers planted for me before I was born, so do I plan for those who will come after me. The old man had no guarantee that those trees would bear fruit. He had no way of knowing whether they would fall ill to time, to disease, or drought, but he had hope. He hoped that the measures that he put into place would continue to care for the future generations as the trees his grandparents had planted had provided for him. The old man believed that the children following him would be free of worry of hunger because he had provided for them. I would like to say that we have children protesting, and they're doing a great job. I'm not, saying anything about them, but they have had to take up the role of protector, of protester, and of disruptor to the status quo. Instead of worrying about normal kid life, friends, grades, what they'll wear to the pool tomorrow, we force them to grow up into more responsible and respectful adults than we are. And that's not fair. We tell them that they need to step up, to speak out, to be leaders. Well, they're crying out in every way that they can, that they know how to. We need to listen. It is time to offer an olive branch to the next generation. And I'm going to end, I promise, the long spiel with this solar farm. This is our tree. This is our branch. This is what we can offer to the future. There's so little in this life that we truly have the ability to control. But with this gift, we can offer our children and their children hope. So thank you very much.
The only reason my timer didn't go off is my battery's dying. It would have gone off about 2 minutes ago.
She did a lovely job.
Oh, yeah, very fast talking too. You got it, Jen?
I'll be slow but quick. Greg Michael, of 160 Brookside Lane. I believe in smart planning, and I believe you guys have a tough job of kind of balancing all of the important things in our lives. And I believe that we have the resources in New York State with the Regional Planning and Development Board, with NYSERDA. There are people that are looking at how do we incentivize renewables in this world that we live in. And all of us, whether we live here in Brookside, in Village, or on the fringes, or even out further, we are heavily dependent on the energy that we use. If you look at our energy consumption compared to others across the world, and I've spent more than a decade of my life living in other places and learning from other communities about living wisely and frugally, and most of us, I would gather, in this room are not. And so the energy-rich life that we live has to come from somewhere. And I would encourage conservation for all of us, but we need to look at a slate of solutions that have rules and appreciate that you guys are thinking about how do we do this wisely? Because there are energy projects that, come in with some program and big fanfare and aren't all that well planned out. So I appreciate that you're taking the time to look at that. But I think as a community, we all need to look at how can we decrease our energy footprint first. Our agriculture, our schools, our public buildings are just churning out emissions at the expense of our own communities, but communities throughout the world. So yeah, my reason for being here is to say thank you for looking at this closely. Thank you for taking everyone's, you know, their priorities into consideration, but we're a community, and I spent over a decade in Asia, but community, when you look at your life, you have to look at what supports your life, and it's community, and it's the world that supports us. So our water, our air, our land. So yeah, I'll spare the climate change spiel, but it's really important that we have a venue. We're in a free country. We can talk about what's important to us, and we have a governing body that's elected by us that can say, this is the best way to do it. And so, good luck.
Thank you. Thank you. That was number.
We're here.
14.
Tom Bassett.
Down here? Remember, Tom, it's about about this today.
Thank God the supervisor's iPhone in. Oh.
Yeah, I got
That was I never let a retired attorney speak it about anything in any form.
We can make it 3 minutes.
Yeah. I have a little bit of a sense of deja vu though, because I remember, totally irrelevant, but when Snooks Pond was drained, there was a similar gathering of people. And I spoke on behalf of the neighbors who own property around the pond, and that was a long time ago. But anyway, my name is Tom Bassett. My wife and I live at 7321 Barbary Lane, Manlius, on the mucky end of Snooks Pond. We have 5 adult children, 2 of whom lived on the West Coast and are now, ironically, back in central New York. Those 2 individuals, those 2 daughters being the mothers of our 4 young granddaughters. I masochistically majored in government and I followed current events way too closely ever since. But anyway, that's my background. I did want to say though to I'm not sure she's recognized, but maybe I only know that this is Heather Waters' birthday.
Oh,
and,
is it right?
yeah, so congratulations to Councilor Waters for breaking away from her party to.
This is her birthday.
This is a perfect party, thank you.
Oh, okay. So I've been impressed in prior appearances before this board, which happens to now have a mixed composition of Republicans and Democrats. The prior board, back in 2016, was, which the supervisor knows, as does Councilor Green, was 100% Republican. It reminds me of the Richard Nixon advocacy for the original passage of the establishment of the Environmental Protection Agency, back when Republicans were advocates for environmental actions and laws. So back in early 2016, the town elected to have their attorney draft a new law to address this very subject, mainly the regulation of large-scale solar arrays. It also categorized smaller arrays, like rooftop arrays, whatever. But anyway, there were numerous public hearings held at that time. The board members asked intelligent questions. Lots of people showed up for those hearings, providing their input. And then there were a series of approvals, culminating on October 26th of 2016 with the actual resolution enacting what is the existing, the primary existing solar law. it was unanimously passed. And I just wanted to quickly read what its primary purpose was. I want to repeat and reassert basically everything that has been said so articulately by so many before me, because I agree with pretty much everything that was said. But anyway, this is how this legislation started. The town of Manlius, through these regulations, seeks to promote the safe, effective, and efficient use of solar photovoltaic energy systems that reduce on-site and off-site consumption of utility-supplied energy while protecting the health, safety, and welfare of adjacent and surrounding land uses and properties. The town of Manlius recognizes that solar energy is an abundant, renewable, non-polluting energy resource, and that its conversion to electric energy will reduce our dependence on non-renewable energy resources and decrease the air and water pollution that results from the use of conventional energy sources. It is therefore the intent and purpose of these regulations to balance, and the word balance has been used several times today accurately, the encouragement of this renewable resource with any impact such use may have on health, welfare, and safety to the community, and preserving and protecting the aesthetic qualities of the town of Manlius. So that was a pretty amazing statement of intent. The legislation itself was 16 pages in length. It was actually a combination of a model statute that the representative we heard earlier from the Central New York Regional Planning and Development Board they had drafted model law. They gave that to the town attorney. The town attorney had merged that with a law that he had prepared. And the culmination was this law that was passed October 26, 2016. And what that law did was try to balance the interests of those involved. It contained numerous technical terms and conditions. Criteria that were to be considered were view sheds, screening, operational maintenance, and decommissioning, removal plans. It mentioned saturation. It defined saturation as having solar farms that were less than 1 mile from one another. Anyway, it created a balance. And then subsequent to that, there were several other, well, in 2017, there were applications submitted to the town board. And since that time, 5 applications for special permits were approved by the board. And those are the 5 that are outstanding now. But then the board decided to offload the responsibility for reviewing applications to the planning board, which it opted to do. And then the 2 current Duguid Road and Salt Springs Road applications are pending before the planning board. And the planning board seeks guidance as to what to do, even though they have the authority to apply all of this criteria that was in this 2016 law to reach decisions. So now we're, as a consequence of neighborhood opposition to these 2 pending applications for special permits, we have, where we're at in this proposed moratorium. So that's how we got here. And I'm ambivalent about the situation because I understand the logic of planning, of the in development comprehensive plan, the logic of, but what I don't understand, maybe somebody can educate me about that. Right now, these facilities are allowed in industrial and resident or rural agricultural zones. What I'm not sure about is in a comprehensive plan, if the only places that such arrays are allowed are where no one will object, I just wonder whether any project is likely to go forward under those circumstances. It would be just chucking the criteria that already exist and limiting the locations of such arrays to a possibly small segment of the town away from more or less anything and everything. And so that's
Okay. Are you good, Tom? Because you're a little over the line.
that's what I have to say. So I just hope that John is correct, that you all are working on the comprehensive plan, that you won't just roll the moratorium over for an additional 6 months or an additional year or 2 years. Because in the meantime, as has been said, the world is burning.
Thank you, Tom.
Julie Fenster.
Yes, yes, sorry.
My name is Julie Fenster. I live at Upland Unity Farm, 100-acre farm, and
Julie, please address the board.
oh, I'm terribly sorry.
I can hear you when you go that way.
I'm
sorry.
used to doing cabaret.
Oh.
This is the microphone.
Yeah, that's-
Yeah, we have a beautiful 100-acre farm. We've devoted about 75 of those acres to natural habitat. I've been an activist, environmentalist all my life, and I guess I'm dedicated to the idea that if humans have destroyed, have brought on global warming, I don't believe that you preserve the environment by destroying the environment. So I'm in favor of the moratorium very, very heartily, because I believe good planning is essential right now. I understand the urgency. In fact, I have a little trivia question for you. Well, who was the first president? I'm a historian as well. Who's the first president who urgently advocated fighting in favor of stopping global warming? Who was the first president who brought that up? It's Lyndon Johnson in 1964. And so I submit that it was bad planning since then and stupidity that brought us to the current state. The current state where it is quite urgent, but no more bad planning, no more stupidity. That's why I'm advocating for the moratorium as an environmentalist. I'm suggesting that the board go over some specific goals, including land use. Let's make sure the land use is proper. Let's go over the laws and ordinances, of course, in the next 6 months. Let's look at the financial incentives and make sure they're wise. Make sure that individuals and the town are both benefiting from solar farms. Make sure the labor, not only here, but the labor that's creating solar panels overseas. Let's make sure we protect labor. And of course, the environmental concerns. Some people have tossed those off. No, they're important. They're important. We have time to make sure we get it right. And I believe so firmly in this that I invite the marvelous high school students who have come here. They're so committed. I hope they work during the next 6 months with the board, with committees. Let's get out and really research this on a micro level, not in a general sense, but in a Manlius sense. What is exactly right for Manlius? The high school students could help so much to make Manlius the best planet and the smartest town. And 6 months, yeah, I realize it's great to go ahead, and there are some of these sites that can go ahead now, even with the moratorium. But I believe that the 6 months now will save us from mistakes that we'll regret. I can't imagine wanting to rush into something this important. It makes no sense for a town as smart as Manlius. Finally, and on a personal note, I'd just like to say I'm a little bit disappointed by some of the speeches tonight that characterize a kind of an us and them mentality. I don't think there's a person in this room, I'm positive of it, that denies climate change. Is there? Raise your hand. I don't think there's a person in this room who isn't concerned about it, who isn't in favor of alternative energy. Anybody here not in favor of alternative energy for Manlius? No, we're all on the same side. So don't characterize someone who's in favor of the moratorium as somehow, only wanting to hurt children. No. I love the environment. I love Manlius. So does everybody I've talked to. But we want to do it right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Andrew Day.
Andrew's coming up. I would like to just, for that, because I was trying to figure out how many board members I've gone through. worked with, I should say, worked with it 12 years and it's
Gone through.
gone through. It's like 17, you know, and the fact that there's always been that forthright future of look of what we are dealing with, you know, and in fact, as John pointed out, Sarah is co-chairing with the planning board, Arnie Polkinson, has put together a solar study group. And we started this in June, I think, didn't you? Or
Yeah, we had.
maybe
our
even
first
earlier.
meeting.
before
We started earlier. We had our first meeting in June and then one in July.
Right. So we've already, you know, got the wheels turning on this. So that's how we do it here, you know. So I just wanted to point that out.
And
Go
would
ahead,
you mind, I just need to use the ladies' room, I'll be super quick, but can we just like take like a 2-minute intermission?
Either that or we can just keep it for 7 minutes, you know. No, go ahead.
Okay, so I don't want to miss it, but I will be
Yeah.
right back.
All right.
I would have skipped that whole spiel if I know.
Well, I didn't know. Sorry, I should have warned you. Spiel. Go ahead, you can.
Wait,
Sure.
No, can I make a comment first? Because I know Caitlin worked on this.
We're not taking a 2-minute break, just Caitlin is. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Something I'll say is that I was working for.
Excuse me, everyone. We're still in the meeting right now, and we have a board member that's talking, and so I would just ask you not to
Everyone needs
speak.
we should probably take a stretch break too at this point. But I would just say that, yeah, looking after bodies is important. I used to work for Columbia Business School and I fundraised from alumni all across the world, but mostly the country. And in 2005 and 6 and 7, I was in the rooms with investment bankers and venture capitalists who were all investing in adaptation technology because they knew what was coming for climate change, right? So people who are going to benefit, who need to survive in a business sense, and all our largest companies are making these plans. So I am very keenly interested in making sure that one of the best run towns, I think, in the world, right? I'll take a page out of Principal Eileen Lux's page, you know, the best elementary schools in the world. She always talks about Fayal. I would say that and frankly, the fact that we have 17 towns in this county. Oh, forgive me. So yeah, 19 total. We have all these towns in the county that are trying to make things work too. We have an opportunity because I'm trying to balance the urgency and the concern and the anxiety about this with opportunity.
Yeah.
That's I just wanted to mention that as that I was thinking about this time of sitting in this room and hearing about all the things they were investing in, the stilts and the change, you know, all the things that they knew because of rising sea levels, in particular. So anyway.
Okay.
Caitlin is not here, but and let's talk about everybody watching.
If you want to get started, I'm sure she'll be ready. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. All right, my name's Andrew Day. I'm with Source Renewables. I'm developing Salt Springs project.
Oh, okay.
And not only do I have the Salt Springs project, but we have approved project on Taft Road that's received a special use permit.
Yep.
As well as it's site plan approval, and it's about to start construction. We're going to build a permit speak. So we own property in Manlius. We're a taxpayer. We're here for the long haul. We not only develop solar projects, but we do the subscriber acquisition and management. So we're involved with the projects for the life of the project. The proposed solar moratorium, like the main point that I want to bring up here is the fact that it's really not necessary. You have a solar law on the books. That's one of the reasons we came to Manlius, because it's got one of the most comprehensive solar laws that dictates where we can put a solar project and under what conditions we can develop one. We go through an extensive permitting process with the town board and the planning board and so forth to ensure that the project is developed and designed in a way that's responsible from an environmental standpoint. From a planning standpoint, we go through public hearings to hear from our neighbors and the other members of the community that either are for or opposed to the project. We adjust the site plans and the scope of the project based on those applications or on those comments. And so the solar law is working. It provides a deliberative process. We're required to have a special use permit before we are able to go through and build a solar farm, pull a building permit. And that in itself provides the deliberative nature that to make sure that a project isn't put in a place that it shouldn't be. Now, I understand with our project, there's local neighborhood concerns, and we try to address those with proper design, setbacks, and screening, and the fact of the matter is that locally, and I think the point was made up before, that Manlius isn't going to be all solar projects and solar farms. Right now, there's 5 approved solar projects that are going forward. And it's not only our project, it's not just our construction, it's a lot of other projects that are starting that are not contained within this solar moratorium. So really, and at this point, the distribution feeders and the local substations can only handle so much distributed generation back onto the grid. And as we speak now, substation is queued up, it's full. So in reality, the moratorium is only going to affect the 2 projects, our project and the Do Good Road project. And beyond that, there's not going to be any other community solar projects or many other, depending upon if they can increase the hosting capacity, but the hosting capacity today, there's not going to be anywhere. So, the law that you have in place is working. It's provided the process for solar projects to get approved and projects to move around. And so the moratorium isn't going to have an effect on solar that's going to happen. If it's a large scale renewable project, that gets handled at the state level. So really what we're talking about is small scale distributed generation projects. We're committed to making the design choices and community input. And we're in the development business. We're happy to make our case in front of the planning board. They have the tools that they need in order to either approve or reject our project. All we're asking for is the ability to present our project and be voted on. And we think that this solar moratorium unfairly is targeted towards these 2 projects, and it has no effect on the future, on the projects that have already been approved and passed. And so, in parting, appreciate the community support that we receive, that solar receives. I think that it just demonstrates the kind of work that we're doing and the importance of it. And looking forward to making our case on our project and the benefits from increased tax base, tax revenues, improved power grid, and also environmental benefits. So with that, I'd like to thank the town board and supervisor for considering this and hope that you understand that the moratorium is not necessary to have a successful solar implementation.
Sir, could you just share your name with me?
Yes. Andrew Day.
Yes, thank you. You just explain a little bit further why the project, pardon me, excuse me, sir. Why the project, why there are limitations on how much solar could be developed in the town. So why would we be unable to put a volume of solar projects in our municipality?
Sure. So with distributed generation, these projects, the electricity generated goes directly back onto the grid. So the grid has to be stabilized between the generation and the load. And there's only so much generation that can be put on with the existing infrastructure, the distribution feeders and substations, and they're at their capacity. So and so that's really the limitation. You can't put additional electricity beyond electric.
So the moratorium, while it could have hypothetically helped the town to prevent this, onslaught of solar projects from coming and us being unprepared or ill-prepared to deal with that. That is not a founded fear because we're at capacity already. If we could add one more solar project to it, that would be a miracle. There's really not that much more space on the substation or on the way.
That's correct.
Thank you so much. Miller?
Thanks for the board. It's a tough job you've got listening to a lot of different points of view. And you're representing everybody. So thank you. I know it's no easy task. My name is Andy Miller, and I'm here tonight representing my family who are working to develop a community solar project on their property on Salt Springs Road in the town of Manlius. And they're working with the gentleman who just spoke, his company, to make that happen. All right, our family's interest for this property is to find the best use for the land. The property is an open location. It has very little topsoil, very shallow topsoil, it's bedrock underneath. It's far from ideal for farming purposes. The property is ideal, however, to develop a renewable source of energy with little, if any, negative impact on the land, the school system, the environment, or neighbors. The shallow bedrock provides a natural stable surface on which to mount the framing for the solar panels, and the elimination of future chemical or fertilizer applications which might be needed in order to make the land more tillable. They won't be necessary for at least the 25-year lifespan of the panels that we're talking about putting in. The development of a solar array that will supplement our energy grid without the introduction of additional infrastructure, this is a best use scenario for the land. The generation of electricity that can be pushed into our community to offset the use of non-renewable fossil fuels, as many people tonight have done a wonderful job of presenting, as a best use scenario for this property. The increase in tax levy without creating an additional strain on our water systems, power grids, school resources, or town workers, this is the best use scenario for this piece of property. In conclusion, I'd like to say that a moratorium on solar collection systems or solar farms, it's not in the best interest of the town. As Andrew just pointed out, there are some really important reasons why a moratorium could be a problem for putting not only this project in place, but future projects in place. Working with those who are willing to develop a project that will take into account all the residents' concerns and desires is a great idea. We are confident that the planning board will take seriously and address all concerns those opposed to the project bring to the table through the public process of participation. I ask you to vote no on the moratorium. And I thank again all of those who spoke in favor of the positive environmental impacts of solar energy and the problems that we're looking at as a nation, as a world, if we don't do something as quickly as we can. Thank you very much.
Roseanne and George Laura, please.
Good evening. My name is Roseanne Yorvis, and I live at 4694 Whetstone Road. My husband, George Yorvis lives in the same place. We have been town of Manlius residents for 45 years. In that time, I have seen much growth and much development in the town. Some of it very positive, some of it not so planned. So that is one of the reasons that I commend the board for taking the time to go through this seriously and with great deliberation to look at all the elements involved in such a project. I won't belabor the point in terms of the advantages of solar and debunking some of the issues that have been raised already. I think that's been very well done. So Ed, I'm gonna make you happy tonight. You know from my previous presentations that I tend to be quick and to the point.
Yes.
You're gonna be very happy. So I won't repeat all of that, but from a personal point of view, my husband and I have participated, we right now participate in community solar. We're concerned about climate change, and we feel that this is one of the ways that we can lessen dependence on fossil fuels. There are several added benefits, and that it lessens our energy bills. And given that we participate in a solar farm, we don't have to install solar panels. If we move, we take it with us. It's a win-win situation for us and for the environment. And actually, we encourage others to follow suit. The 2 points I would leave with the board tonight are simply, we are for solar power. And I repeat that because I know you are taking account of speakers, definitely yes. The second thing that I would like you to consider is that I think it is wise to consider a pause as you deliberate a really serious issue. This falls right into what has been proposed with comprehensive planning, which was a wise decision, and I think that's part of it. So I don't think we should put the horse before the cart.
I'm Roseanne's husband. We live at the same place. I have a science background and have been following the concept of climate change for a number of years. I have a real concern for our environment, as my wife mentioned. We see the use of solar energy in the form of photovoltaic panels as one of the tools in the renewable energy kit to reduce our impact on the environment. I may be a little repetitive, but it makes me feel good being here as a citizen to speak out. It's something I can do. Although I may have had concerns about use of potential agricultural land and the view if the solar farms were in my backyard, I think the proposals presented here over the last few months would have eased any concern. And because I really don't find solar arrays offensive, I've seen many of them out west, all over the place, up in Canada. We need to move forward and embrace current technologies such as solar to reduce our impact on the environment. The overwhelming evidence is there, and it's been developed over many years, at least the 20, 30 years that I've been looking at it. I hope the town board will eventually go ahead and approve these projects. And I've cut this really short.
Thank you.
Just one last thing.
You can take his time.
Yeah, I relinquish my time.
Yes.
One last thing, I hope everybody, the board and the folks here, have been as impressed as I have been by the passion, the knowledge, and the folks who are here.
Yeah, thank you.
So John Cook or Hodge?
I could defer my comments a bit to the end.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jay Lou?
Yeah. Hello, my name is Jay Lou. I go to FM schools and I live in Brookyard Falls Road. So today I've heard a lot of things that I was going to say, but there's one thing that I think is important but has not been mentioned yet. So the reason we're having all this climate change, as we all know, is from the burning of fossil fuels. And fossil fuels contribute the most to global warming. And if we have the solar panels implemented, then we wouldn't need to use as much fossil fuels. Because if we had this project was underway, it would produce over 20 megawatts of power, according to this fact sheet. And that's 20 megawatts of power less that we have to rely on coal plants or like oil burning. So that's a lot of less carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere, because burning coal and fossil fuels, it releases up to 50 times more than using the solar panels. So that's a huge change. That's a huge difference. So if we switch, the faster we switch to solar panels, the less carbon dioxide would be emitted into the air, and that would be a lot better for our the climate around, the environments around us. Because the solar panels, maybe they have some environmental impact, but there's a bigger environmental impact, and that is the CO2 released by the coal plants. So the less coal that we need to burn, the better. So that's why implementing solar panels faster is the better way to go.
Van Cleary Hammerstedt.
Wow. I'm Van Cleary Hammerstedt. I live on Kessler Lane, and I learned a lesson today, which was I have to come earlier to these meetings because everyone spoke ahead of me, and the points that I was going to make, others made more eloquently than my points. So.
And all of our meetings are like this.
Right. So I'm very excited to see so many people here who are passionate as I am for solar power and to move away from fossil fuels. I think it's really, really important. And so I'm really excited to see people here and it's supporting that, and common sense, sensible solar development is what we need in the village. And I'm especially excited to see all the young people here who are leading the way. And, you know, I feel like our generation in some ways has failed you. Like I think about my parents' generation and, you know, they talk about the greatest generation, and our generation in a lot of ways has failed you because we have known this for a long time that we need to move away from fossil fuels, and we have not done it. And that's a shame on us. And so we have to move as quickly as we can, feasibly and commonsensically, to move to renewable energy. So that's my
Okay.
Thank you.
Morocco.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Morocco, and my family owns property at Salt Springs Road, 8394 Salt Springs, and 8406. It's about 80 acres, and I live just below this young lady over here, spoke earlier, Julie Founcier. I just want to thank this board. I was here a month ago. 80%, 90% of people were not here probably, so I don't want to repeat that whole deal. But my request was for the moratorium that you enacted and take some time out in the planning of this, solar. And I don't think anyone, like Julie said, no one's got solar. I think things were just moving so fast with the 4 or 5 other projects that were approved, and then 2 more moving very quickly. Now this project, Salt Springs, I happen to be the property right on top of it. So I'm on the lot line. So it's very concerning. But I want to thank this board for helping the planning board get education. I think there's a lot to learn about it. There's zoning issues. The 2016 zoning that was written was for small solar. It's maybe for 600 or 700 panels. We're talking 13,400 panels in Salt Springs alone. And things like the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and learning more about that and the project. And most importantly, the comprehensive plan, which I said before. I think the town or the taxpayers have spent or are going to spend $160,000 on this comprehensive plan. Maybe less. A little less.
A little less than
That's our plan
150. 150.
It's 50.
So just 50?
Well, that's this
Okay.
year.
Well, we're
So
applying
first
for grant
edition.
funding for next year.
Right.
So anyway, I've been through comprehensive plans before. They, some work, some don't, but it seems like we need this right now, and we need to find areas that we can do this development and do it tastefully. And I do have one, really big concern, and that is tax base. And, with taking hundreds and hundreds of acres off of the tax rolls. I know there's a deal with the OCEDA and the pilot and all that, but I don't think the public really knows what that deal is. I read about the town of Clay. Maybe people heard about it. So there's some economics to this too. So I would appreciate you taking the time. I support the moratorium. I think it really needs to happen. And I understand that the county didn't respond, so it'll take, I guess, another couple more weeks. But appreciate all the time and you helping the planning board do the right thing in the future. Thank you very much.
Alan Olmsted. I live at 8645 East Seneca Turnpike, which is kind of right behind the proposed project. I happen to be a real estate broker. I was a broker about the transaction, so I can see both sides of how the transaction came together. Not only that, I specialize in land and I operate statewide from Westchester County to Buffalo. And I've dealt with hundreds of transactions with multiple solar companies. And what Andrew talked about earlier with one of the biggest concerns that come up, and I think design, layout, planning, that's all very important. I agree with that. But the capacity is something that's really critical. If the capacity is gone, the project's gone. And so right now, Manlius has, I don't know about the large one on Duke Road. I'm not sure what that really entails. But the one that's here on Salt Springs Road has the capacity, has been, from my understanding, approved through the National Grid to be able to move forward if the town so approved it. If you lose that, I've witnessed many, many contracts that have just fallen apart because of the capacity aspect of it. There's many projects, about 90% of the projects I work on do not get to completion because of capacity. And if that capacity is gone, you don't get it back unless somebody puts roughly $4 to $10 million into that infrastructure, the National Grid, or whatever the utility is, it's National Grid around our area. So if that disappears, all the design that goes into the project now and whether the moratorium goes into effect or not goes into effect, if they determine that this project goes on pause, the transaction may not be able to move forward, you know that. The capacity disappears and the town may have designed areas that could be approved for meeting public approval, which is important. I think it's very important to blend public property owners as well as areas that are acceptable. So if that project is disapproved, doesn't go through, the capacity is probably going to disappear. It could go downstream to another municipality through the National Grid, and we may not ever be able to get that back unless a developer puts in that money. And I have not witnessed one that's willing to put in $4, $5, $6, $7 million to upgrade the National Grid's their local substations. So the moratorium, I've dealt with the town of Manlius Planning Board many, many times. I feel like they're very competent. I don't know if there's some new regulations that are being considered that would modify where the area should be or shouldn't be. But I would ask that if they choose to, choose to move forward with a moratorium, I would ask that they would consider the Salt Spring project to be excluded, like several of the other projects are excluded from that moratorium. Because they have a project that's already, capacity's been locked in. I think that the project, as I've looked at, I would strongly recommend significant modification to the screening that's there. There's some screening that was put in locations I don't understand why, but there's other areas that I would strongly recommend along Mr. Morocco's boundary would be really important to screen that because of the visibility coming from Fayetteville towards Shenango. I think it's just wide open. You'd be able to see that. That would be my recommendation on that. I happen to be a property owner that joins back up to that. There's a little bit of a smaller section that kind of separates one corner of it, but I think the solar is important. I think blending municipalities and public concerns is important. I would ask the town board to consider what this may, how it may affect this specific project.
Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, evening. My name is Sheila Ben, and I live on the Clinton Road in Manlius. My family, myself, my husband, and it's also his birthday today.
Oh, hey, birthday buddies.
We've lived in Fayetteville, Manlius since 1974. Our three children all graduated Fayetteville Manlius High School, and I've got 4 grandchildren. And I just want to say, if everybody's here, we all care about the community, how old we are, how young we are, how many children, grandchildren, whatever. I just threw that out there. So I'm one of you, I care about Fayetteville Manlius like all of you do. This is going to be choppy because I'm trying to cut out the stuff that someone else said already. The one thing that, though, I want to start out saying I laud the board on their position of the 6-month moratorium. I think that this is not about getting it done as quick as possible. It's about getting it done the best way possible. And none of us knows what we don't know. That's why we have experts. There are experts in zoning, there are experts in pilot projects, there are experts in land use. Someone coming forward telling you their opinion is just that. We all have our opinion, but we don't all know everything about this. The one thing that kind of popped out at me, and I think you were following up on, was the gentleman saying that the substation is already at capacity. And I thought, well, what does that mean? Since 7 projects proposed, 6 of those have been since the beginning of 2020. That sounds like a lot, but if you really think about what was happening in 2020 for the rest of this world, nothing. Okay, we're all locked down. And from 2020, somehow 6 projects got proposed. 5 have been approved, and my understanding is none of them have broken ground. So are we all here just to see how many of these can we get 5? I mean, 5 have been approved. This board is not, but their head is not in the sand. They have approved 5. What exactly why are we going forward with 2 more when they haven't broken ground and the grid's at capacity? So I don't have the answer to that, but I think that's why you need a moratorium. We don't have the answers, we don't know them, but there's a lot of questions that people on all sides of this have. And you don't go ahead and do things and figure it out while you're doing it. Figure it out first, and once you know the answers, and you may not get the right answer, and you may have to ask a number of different people, but once you get the answer, then you proceed. And if you go before that, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And these are not little like boo mistakes. These are the kind of mistakes that decades later you look back and go, if we only realized that, we only thought that, this is the opportunity to think about it now and get it right. It's about planning for the future, but smart, taking all the pros and cons of the different ways to proceed, taking into consideration, and then you'll do your job, which is make a wise decision. One of the things that I kind of like to do in my own world, life, and career was look at what other people are doing. Because I figure they might have some better ideas than I do. And so If you look at some of the neighboring communities, Casanova for one, which I think has a lot of similarities to Manlius personally, they put in a one-year moratorium. They didn't say we're not gonna do this. They just said, we need to know what we need to know before we proceed. And this community and the agricultural nature of it that brought people to Casanova, that brought people to Manlius, there's something in preserving that. Does it outweigh other benefits? That's something to be figured out. The same thing with clay. They were getting an onslaught of these applications. And what they said was, time out. It wasn't that anything that happened was bad, but they said the mere multitude of applications, which is exactly what we have. I mean, you know, 6 of them since 2020, when the rest of us were sleeping in the basement. That's a lot, okay? The mere multitude of applications is enough to go for moratorium, to take a time out and say, what's going on? Why is this happening? And what do we do best for the community? And I think after the time period when you've got the answers, that's the time to proceed. And everyone has had a little bit different opinions on it. And I truly think, you know, I respect everyone's opinion. It's based on their life experiences and their own circumstances. And you have a hard job to do, but I think the moratorium is the best and, in my opinion, the way to go. And I thank you for that.
Sheila, I can address on the distributed generation. So they already locked in. So the projects that are all on the table, the Salt Springs Road has locked in the substation. So they were parts of the projects that filled that capacity, is what they explained earlier.
Okay.
So they're not trying to add to it. They counted for it. Thank you so much, Sheila.
McManus was here to speak, but she had to go home. She lives at 200 Clinton Street, and she expressed an urgency to act balanced with planning. Our next speaker is Rebecca Rolnick.
What was the name? Oh, there she is.
Rebecca Rolnick.
She's working for you.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Rolnick. I live at 209 Passion Drive in Fayetteville. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's getting late. I think we need to wake up a little bit. Everybody like stretch
This is educator, clearly. I was just thinking how my
out.
legs are cramped.
So I'll try to keep this short.
You can take your mask off too for here. So thank you.
So I've lived in Fayetteville for 15 years since 2006. I moved here in 3rd grade. I graduated from FM, where I was the president of the environmental club. And 2 years ago, I graduated from SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry, where I studied conservation biology. I'm currently working at Baltimore Woods Nature Center. And last year, I was recognized as Volunteer of the Month in the Eagle Bulletin for my work with the Young Naturalists program at our local libraries. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. So first, I want to acknowledge the opposition. Although based on all the speakers, it seems like everyone is pretty much in support of solar in general, which makes me happy to see. And I want to say that I think this issue is about something deeper than the superficial aesthetics of the solar installation, especially for farmers. This is a land use issue, and I imagine, especially for farmers, that it's more about having a deep and often intergenerational connection to the land. I respect that a lot, and a strong sense of place is something that we could all use a lot more of. Because when you care about a place and it's a part of you and you're part of it, you don't want to lose it or see it change, because it feels like you're losing your home. And I empathize with this because I have a hard time dealing with changes in my own life, even if it's a good change. But that being said, if we're proactive now and transition to more renewable energy, we'll be preventing even bigger changes in the future. The fires and floods that many others here have mentioned are only the more dramatic effects of climate change. During my 4 years at ESF in college, almost every single class that I took, whether we were learning about birds or salamanders or forest ecology or water or other natural resources. We learned about how that aspect of nature is being negatively impacted by climate change, not in the future, but already now. Climate change affects everything. If we don't do something about it, we're going to lose our landscapes and these places that we love anyway. Many places, including Arizona, where a friend of mine lives, are facing permanent, irreversible changes in the ecosystems and the types of plants that are able to survive there. You might not think we care about plants that much, but that means that agriculture is at risk too. And as another example that someone briefly mentioned, maple trees, which are a very important part of New York State's ecology, culture, and economy, are already producing less sap and syrup than they used to. We have to do what we can now to mitigate these effects before they get even worse. And I know it's hard to see the impact of what we do when these problems are at a global scale. We can't see the carbon dioxide from our fossil fuels traveling through the atmosphere, and we won't be able to see them disappear as renewable energy gets more common. But we do have an impact, and to fix global problems, we all need to work together to take action on the local level. So I know that change is hard, but if we do it right, these solar installations will be something that we can all coexist with, and even something that we can be proud of, knowing that we're doing our part to help solve the biggest challenge that any of us have faced in our lifetimes. So thank you, and whatever you decide about the moratorium, I would like to see as much progress as possible that you would consider to be wise to take place within the next 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, my name is Mike Vogel. I'm an environmental land use and zoning attorney. I'm based in Syracuse, New York. Represent the Moroccos. I also happen to be a Manlius resident myself. Like I said, I practice in environmental land use law really throughout the state, so I'm very familiar with a lot of these issues that planning board and this town board dealing with, including moratoriums and when they're appropriate. Really, this is a situation and circumstance for a moratorium. It's an acknowledged and lawful planning and land use tool. It's been unanimously upheld by courts really throughout the state. And exactly these types of situations, and that's where towns faced with a multitude of applications for a particular use, and it's recognized by town board and planning board, especially in this case. I was at the planning board hearing, and they were really supportive of the idea of the moratorium. They really seemed to express they really felt like they didn't have the tools, really weren't equipped to handle the application based on current law that's in place. And that's really the whole reason why moratorium exists to begin with. Explain that at the outset, but it's been a couple hours, so it's worth repeating it. But so I think given that it's completely appropriate here, I mean, obviously, it would be certainly rational to adopt a moratorium here because there's several different things going on. One, is that the town's engaging in town-wide comprehensive planning, which obviously, if you're looking at what the goals, land use goals are for the town, it makes sense that there's a multitude of applications for particular use. They want to hit the pause button on that while you develop a comprehensive plan to make sure that the areas that are currently zoned for solar are appropriate, the size of the projects are appropriate, locations, and all those types of issues. So it really makes sense. And also where you have a planning board that's kind of really asking for it because the law really gives them the tools they need to process the applications. If you look at the the existing zoning law was adopted in 2016, 5 years ago. Now, in some situations, with respect to certain uses, that may not really seem like a long time. But obviously here, with respect to solar and the rate that solar is kind of developing and changes, which everyone's kind of talking about tonight, it makes sense to revisit that law because I think in this case, 5 years is a long time with respect to solar. And obviously you're not alone. We see that there's moratoriums being passed really, obviously in Onondaga County, say the town of Clay, Madison, obviously Casanova. I can just tell you, just based on my experience practicing in this area of law, you really see it throughout the state that people are revisiting their solar laws and making sure that they're up to date and are appropriate for the size of the systems that we're seeing now. So that's I think that's really all I wanted to say tonight. Obviously, we think the moratorium is a good idea. I think the only other thing I would add is that by adopting this moratorium, and you explain this, there's no, it's not a, you're not making a decision that you don't want solar in town or that solar is not appropriate. You're just making a decision that for the next 6 months, it's going to be studied and evaluated. You're also not making any decision or judgment on any particular application. It's just hitting the pause button on applications in order to allow you to study it thoroughly. So with that, that's all I have to say. We're urged to adopt the moratorium, and thank you.
James Rice.
Evening.
Most of the people work from Fayetteville. I've been a tax-paying property owner for about 60 years in the town of Manlius. Recently moved to South Springs. Now I see this array going from my backyard all the way up to is it Clinton? It's almost 2 miles of arrays. That's huge. They say these things are safe. They're full of all kinds of toxic chemicals. We're not going to see sheep grazing around them. We got a 6-foot fence with barbed wire. I got deer in my property. They're going to get chased over there, jump over that fence, get cut up with the barbed wire, trample through the arrays and damage some. And this is going to cause this toxic chemicals to move down, because I'm only about 100, 200 feet away from this thing. I'm down here and they're up there. We have an aquifer that we're probably 2-3 miles of properties. And that stuff gets in that aquifer and all of our wells are shot. It's not a simple thing. In most cases, the cells themselves, making them is tough to do because of the toxic chemicals. Destroying them is tough because of the toxic chemicals. My understanding is only one area or place in central New York that will take these things after they're gone. They do wear. In most cases, rainwater can wash many of this stuff away. And the toxic waste per unit of energy is more than nuclear power plants. Got all these things. I'm not totally trying to bypass all the things everybody else said. Shouldn't they make noise? The state laws decrees that noise should only be as loud or slightly louder than the ambient surrounding sound. Solar farms sound no louder than large air conditioning systems become less audible as distance from them. Supposedly, people that work on these things, they have to wear earmuffs because of the noise. Also, I read that the temperature
generated from these can affect the local areas by raising temperature possibly up to 7 degrees. Supposedly, these release nitrogen trifluoride, which is a chemical compound 17,000 times worse for the atmosphere than carbon dioxide. Central New York is not known for an abundance of sunshine. And these things are going to be real haphazard. I can envision if they go through the devaluation of my property, my house, which I just moved to 2 years ago, and everybody else on Salt Springs. It's talk about tax base. We're going to see ours go down, I hope, if it's ever been through. It does say that the chemicals used in the production can leak in the water systems if companies are not careful. I think I've covered everything that I have here, so thank you much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Natalie
Gotta get the clock there.
Bianchi.
My name is Natalie Bianchi. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, as you look this way.
Yeah, I'm Natalie Bianchi and I am on Dampier Circle. And I just wanted to address a few of the things that were shared in a flyer that was passed out before this meeting today. So there were a couple statements in that flyer that were a bit misleading. So I just wanted to address a few of those. And first I want to say that I am a huge environmentalist. I am the Generation Z advisor of an environmental nonprofit. I've been vegan for 3 years, vegetarian for 7 years for the environment. And I've done 2 major research projects on similar topics. So I just want to say that just because I am young, I'm 17 years old, does not mean that I don't have important input. I think that I actually probably know a lot more about this than some of the people who spoke on this today. So I want to address the first thing. They say do it like do it, put it in a landfill like do it. But where is the landfill in Manlius? And I think if you're going to propose this as an alternative, then propose an alternative. Don't just spew these things. We should do it differently. We should do it differently. Then come up with a plan. If you really cared about the environment, you would come up with this alternative plan. I think that another thing that we are taking away green land, as said, I won't repeat, but as said by a lot of people, by not taking action now, we are going to lose green land. Second, they say that we should do this on more barren land, but the primary location of these sites is on agricultural land, which is already made barren by human activity. I won't repeat the climate rhetoric because I know a lot of people are, well, everyone here doesn't like climate change. But I would also like to address, someone said that everyone here cares about the environment, everyone wants to do the best thing for the environment, but I don't necessarily think that's true. I think that there are a lot of people here who are using this rhetoric of saying we should do it differently or saying that we should wait longer for financial reasons. And as a previous speaker said that was against solar energy, they said we need to take 6 months, look at the financial benefits, look at the financial this. Do we? The experts have spoken. They say we need to look to the experts, but the experts have spoken at this podium tonight and we need to listen to them. They have said that toxic chemicals are not leached by solar panels. Why are we ignoring the experts and saying we need to dilly-dally for 6 months and do more research when multiple experts have stood up here and spoke on this topic tonight? Thank you, and I urge you to listen to the young people who I'm so proud of today.
That's the last speaker on our list, but I know Mike Friend had come to the office and you wanted to fill out. Did you want to speak on this tonight? So you had
And I
requested
did,
to speak.
and I know Mike wanted to speak at our last board meeting. I said to wait until, so there you go, Mike. Well, you still get 5 minutes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I will be there.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, councilors. My name is Michael Friend, 63-year resident at 8232 Salt Springs Road. And I support my neighbor's request for solar farm moratorium as well. But a moratorium, of course, is only temporary. And I would be so bold here tonight as to recommend a permanent moratorium or a complete ban on all future industrial type solar farms in Manlius. Unfortunately, it looks like I'm going to probably have to tolerate one of these monstrosities be installed directly behind my own home. But I'd be overjoyed if I knew that the rest of Manlius was not to be barred by any more of these inexpensive and inefficient boondoggles. If individual homeowners may choose to install a solar system on their own property, they have every right and freedom to do so. But government encouragement of commercial grade solar farms is quite another matter entirely. Since I'm not a scientist, I continue to educate myself and do research on the subject, reading books, magazine articles, occasional scientific reports. My preliminary conclusion is that solar power is not the panacea it's sold as. Electricity must be constantly available on demand, whether for home, business, or industrial use. And the relatively cheap and abundant energy that we've enjoyed for so long has allowed us to achieve a tremendous prosperity, increased food supply, good health, longer life, and general well-being overall. Solar power, on the other hand, is instead dilute, intermittent, and expensive. At our latitude here in New York, the incident sunlight is not and never will become anywhere close to vertical, even at midday, and therefore only a small percentage of sunlight, even on a sunny day, would actually be converted to electricity by these panels. I understand this particular limit is called the capacity factor of the solar cells and is defined as the percentage of power that is actually generated over a year when compared to the power that would have been generated if the plant had been operating continuously at 100% capacity over the year. Now, we're told that these proposed solar plants are rated at a certain megawatt levels, but there's no guarantee they will produce anywhere near their rated capacity. Solar panel electrical output and capacity is very sensitive to location, season, orientation, cleanliness, and other factors. Yes, they will need regular cleaning. We're all familiar with our New York weather, and I'm quite curious to find out how much power these arrays would actually produce during our present cloudy summer we've had, as opposed to a summer of full sunshine. And when these aren't producing power, then the spinning reserves of the already existing traditional electric plants have to be ramped up to meet power needs. It's either that or we start getting used to blackouts and brownouts. In addition, if solar plants are so wonderful, why is it necessary for us to invent so many government incentives to build them? A truly efficient
Okay, so we're just gonna reboot for a second, so we're just gonna take a pause.
Reboot, take a pause.
So I'm gonna promote.
Go ahead. All right, everyone. Get ready to ramp it up again.
Folks, I'm gonna promote the, someone in the Zoom room who would like to speak. Marcy,
Yes, hello. How are
Hi,
you?
we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Hi, Carson, thanks.
Yep.
Hi, great. Can you see me? Is it possible to get video and be able to share my screen?
A picture of you.
I think you're.
You should have access to share your screen right now.
I don't see it yet. It just says talking. I see lower hand.
It's gonna disappear and come back.
Magic.
There we go.
There we go.
Now you're muted. There you go.
Hello, everybody. Hi, great to see the board, the supervisor, the residents of Manlius. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about this subject. I'll get right into it. I know it's 9:10 p.m. We've listened to about 30 people speak. I've been keeping track, actually. So my name's Carson Wynand. I'm the senior business developer for a solar development company called CVE. The applicant for the Dugawood Road Solar Farm, and I'm here to ask the town board to exempt the projects currently in front of the planning board from the moratorium. So that includes the source project, the CVE project, and the project proposed on the landfill. I think the presenters before me have done a really great job outlining the larger macro issue here of climate change. I think Andrew Day from Source has done a great job pointing out that the existing solar law is adequate and does actually allow for the review that the town wants. At the end of the whole permitting process, the permit is conditional. It's a conditional use permit. It ultimately comes down to a vote. These projects are not permitted by right. So there's a lot of flexibility in what is proposed and what ends up getting built and permitted at the end of the day. On top of that, I wanted to take a slightly more technical approach to this issue though, and provide some hard data to support Andrew's claims that interconnection is at capacity and to talk about other concerns that have come up from the town. A little bit of context real quick before we get there, and I'll share my screen to pull up some slides. We submitted our initial site plan application to the planning board on February 10th, 2021. So we've been in front of the planning board, in front of the town for about 5 months now. On June 28th, we had our first public hearing and we were met with, a surprising amount of opposition. I think, can you hear me? Is my connection okay? Have I been choppy?
Yeah.
Everything okay? Great. So we weren't aware of any solar study group or any discussions about the possibility of a moratorium. Up until that point, the planning board had earnestly been reviewing our site plan application. We actually thought the town of Manlius was very pro-solar because they had previously approved 5 community solar projects prior to us. At that meeting, John Deere and Caitlin Kreisel, representing the town board, and I also believe the solar study group, made a presentation recommending a moratorium or suggesting that it be considered. And that night, the planning board actually voted to put our review on pause. After listening to John and Caitlin's presentation and speaking with other members of the planning board and the towning board over the past 3 weeks directly, it seems like the main concerns are solar applications will keep coming. There'll end up being too many projects in town. So that's 1. 2, they want to make sure the residents benefit and that the town can adequately negotiate with solar developers. 3, interconnection is a bit of a mystery still. The town's not comfortable not knowing everything about interconnection. And overall, both boards are in favor, but they want to do their proper due diligence. So tonight, I wanted to take this opportunity to proactively try to provide some of that due diligence to the town and avoid a moratorium that I believe is not needed. So I put together a presentation, which I'll try to work through quickly. The first part will address that mystery of interconnection and prove with data that there are really no more projects that can be cited in Manlius. And then the second part is an offer from CVE to help better compensate the town with property tax. So sort of proactively offer what they call a host community agreement. And I'm attempting screen
Hear
right
me?
now.
Delay as
Oh.
well. Carson, are
Let me
you?
know if,
Carson, can you hear me? Town supervisor,
yes.
can you? You have
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, you have 5 minutes. That's what we're giving for the public hearing tonight. So we don't have time for a whole presentation.
But you can email your slides.
But I
Sure.
think you
I
said,
will hit the high points. Yes, I will hit the high points and wrap this up in 1 or 2 minutes. The bottom line is that interconnection is no longer viable in Manlius. So this is an image of the hosting capacity map, the infrastructure in the town of Manlius. These are the power lines. All the ones in red and orange are at capacity or over capacity. The ones in blue have capacity remaining. But the parcels in that area, there's a reason why there's capacity remaining. The parcels themselves are not suitable for solar. So the bottom line, after our rigorous analysis, looking at all the data, there's opportunity for only one more small project, a 2.4 megawatt project off of the eastern part of East Seneca Road. So this is the actual data itself. These are all the power lines in the town of Manlius. This is the latest publicly available data directly from National Grid. It is the interconnection queue. You can see most of them are over capacity or at capacity. The remaining, the handful that do have capacity are in areas where parcels are simply not suitable. So what goes into solar siting is a whole bunch of criteria, starting with all parcels, then applying zoning, acreage, wetlands, topography, protected lands, distance to the power lines, capacity of the power lines, capacity of the substation, land that is not previously developed. Is the landowner interested? You end up with a very small handful of parcels viable for solar. And after running this analysis, our conclusion is that there's only availability for one more small, medium-sized project in Manlius. And because of that, the moratorium is not needed. I'll wrap up quickly here. I did email this presentation to the planning board and the town board. You can look at it in detail. You know, the second concern that was heard loud and clear was making sure the town gets their fair share of tax revenue from these projects. I know under traditional pilots, the pro rata share that is allocated to the town is the lowest between the town, the county, and the school district. So there are mechanisms available out there. CVE is open to talking about them. The most popular one that we've come across in the town of, in the state of New York, is called a host community agreement. It's essentially a contract between a developer and a local governing body whereby the developer agrees to provide the community with certain benefits and mitigate specified impacts of the solar project. So this is a way of making sure the town gets their fair share of the revenue. And we're proactively offering that to the town. We're asking, because you have a robust, adequate solar law in place that does permit these projects conditionally and not by right. And because interconnection has been exhausted, there's no need for a moratorium in the town of Manlius. We ask that the moratorium exclude all projects at the very least currently in front of the planning board.
thank you, Carson.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
How are we doing here?
So I have 17 comments and 2 emails. I will go as fast as I can, and I want to do this one. Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
We did have one hand up, yes.
Yeah, yes,
Just like, yeah, come on up and introduce yourself.
I'm
and-
sorry.
and all that stuff. You should know how to do it by now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Cole, and I live at 7695 King Road in Manlius. I'm here tonight to read a petition signed by over 300 people living in the town of Manlius and organized by Climate Change Awareness and Action on behalf of its members living in the town of Manlius. In 2019, New York State, in recognition of the crisis facing us all, signed the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act into law. The LCPA mandates that 70% of electricity generated must come from renewable sources by 2030. Kate, can you see that? Sorry, which is less than 9 years away. As part of that, 6,000 megawatts of solar energy capacity must be online and serving New Yorkers by 2025. That is just 3.5 years away. In spite of this timeline, strong opposition has been mounted against a proposed solar project on Salt Springs Road in Manlius because of such things as destroying the pastoral views, negatively affecting property values, and some misunderstood and misleading ideas about solar panels. Community solar projects undergo significant scrutiny. There's no fast tracking or pushing them through. They are vetted at both the town and the state level by the local planning board and the local residents. The New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, or NYSERDA. Breaking ground takes years, not months. Permits are needed, funding and tax implications must be worked out, and the process of getting the power from the solar farm to the power grid is another regulatory hurdle. I am proud to support the initiatives of the Town Board of Manlius in taking the lead on making this a climate smart community and looking for the future to ensure an environmentally sustainable climate for our children and grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll let you read off because we should probably wrap this up tonight, I think.
Go ahead, Peter.
Peter, you have,
I would just like to correct some misinformation that
Well,
was said.
no, we can't.
Okay.
So, because we already stated a lot of those things.
But there's somebody over here that is asking to speak.
You want to speak? Sure. Someone new.
Okay. I know we're all very anxious to get home, so I will keep this brief.
Don't forget to introduce yourself.
Yes.
Right, of course.
Yes.
My name is Al, and I live at
Levy. Okay, thank you.
At 8282 White Lake Drive. I just graduated from FM High School. I'm about to go into a world where I don't necessarily know what I'm going to do. I don't know what my career looks like. I don't even know what the next 4 years of my life look like, aside from where I'm going. And I've been told that this is normal. And I guess I agree. But what I don't think is normal is that our generation should be going to a world where we don't just not know what we'll be doing for our careers, but we don't even know if there will be a world for us to go into. I hear talk of chemicals, of heavy metals, and capacities that have been reached, and a great deal of things which I don't understand. However, I do know this. The argument that doing nothing is better than doing something is wrong. We have to do something. And as was said earlier, the experts have spoken. We have the facts. Maybe not everybody here has listened to them, but we have them, and they exist. So why wait? Why wait 6 months? Why wait 6 months to put our future in jeopardy? Thank you.
Yeah, just very quick, I have some questions. Yeah. Hi, my name is Emily Ledger. I'm an FM graduate from 2020. I just had a brief question. I don't support the moratorium. I think we already have enough information established. However, if the moratorium does go through, my question is, does the board have a plan in place to provide transparency surrounding the information they collect on solar farms? I believe the first speaker did say something briefly about bringing information to the light. However, I think it's very important that we
established that information needs to be in the forefront of the people in Manlius, especially if we already have so much information by experts about, I would argue, why the moratorium is not needed. I feel like there needs to be a rationale to provide why the moratorium is needed in this case. So that's the question. If anybody has an answer to that.
Yeah, I'll answer the
Yeah.
initial one,
Oh, I
is
just
that if any board is transparent, we are.
Oh, no, I'm not doubting the
So,
transparency.
so I know that with our study group that we're putting together, we're reaching out to experts in the field.
But I think we need to make a place for it.
Yes.
May I,
Oh, go
may I
ahead,
just say
Heather.
that,
Sure.
thank you, Emily.
Yeah,
I think that's key. And I'm so heartened that you're physically here. And I know it's hard to stay and track everything, track a process along over time. But one of the best ways is through digital engagement. So I wanted to ask our town clerk to describe what's compliance right now. And then I would say as a town board, we are committed to going beyond compliance to be as transparent as possible. But could you be clear with us, Allison, about what is required of us and where it is, and then we can speak to beyond that.
So anytime a town board member is going to, or any town official is going to bring something before the town board, it should appear on the town agenda. Every municipality is required to post what they're going to be considering if they have a website, on the website, so that you can view it. Now, I don't know. I don't like quoting the law in front of the attorney. I understand this is town clerk. And so we do that. I highly recommend, this is like my moment for my plug, everyone go on the website, sign up on the notify me section to receive the agendas. Sign up for the planning board, the town board, and the zoning board. You never know when something might happen next to you that you want to know about. And even if you are young, I recommend signing up and getting engaged. But we meet those requirements. Also with our hybrid meetings, you have the ability to access all of those types of information. Now, we do have a new product that we are going to be using called Civil Space. But I can express from everybody who works in the town of Manlius, we are moving as fast as possible to adapt to what we're doing now in terms of hybrid meetings and getting the stuff out there. We work together, we're gonna be revamping the website. So we will get that out there as soon as we can. We do have a place that you can find documents now. That might be an easy place to just kind of put stuff up there. I know the Sustainable Manlius has a page. These are all things that we can work out internally, but
We could probably put together a pretty simple page of just
Yeah, that'd be great.
what we're looking at, all the materials we're gonna be getting for everybody, and we'll do our best to put everything on there as quickly as possible. 'Cause
And you can always email it
Right.
or contact our office. I mean,
You don't have to foil to get what you need.
Yeah.
I'm trying to say.
You can always contact us. My deputy clerks, I CC them on everything. They know what's going on. If they can't answer the question, I'll get to you as soon as I can and answer the question. So, or email the town board members and kind of stay in touch that way. I know that's kind of puts the burden on you, but that is enough of it.
Well, and two, I think we can just make sure that in the future meeting, we should probably do a little recap, because we're gonna be moving quickly. There's probably something to report every 2 weeks.
Right.
So if we make sure we just keep an eye on that to
Well,
make
that could
sure.
be like one of the committee reports.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So what would be an example of this is the presentation that the speaker said was emailed to us, Allison, but people were curious to look at it. What would happen to it?
So the key is, do I get it? So once I get it, I could retroactively put it in the agenda as using the agenda as sort of a filing system for documents. I don't know that I received that, but I get a lot of emails, so it might be in there. But that is the process. You could just email and ask, hey, can I see that?
Well, I think we could probably put together a single spot for everything about
And
this.
I think the same way we had, like, we could move off some of the other things, like the button underneath.
Absolutely, yeah, like
Just
learn
make a button
more.
there for solar.
So we're working
and
on
we
it.
could put out
For sure.
Even though these are long meetings, we want this. And so, so we'll get you the information.
So we'll make a button and you'll.
There'll be a link to all that.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you. Yep. Okay. You wanna read off
So I have,
the
I have two comments that were submitted.
Okay.
David Harding, Green Street, Fayetteville, says, I strongly support solar development in the town of Manlius. We need to move away from fossil fuels in our economy, and solar is a big part of that. While a moratorium for a large solar
for large solar projects to be warranted, we should not allow NIMBYism to block solar development in the town of Manlius. And I want to say it's Marisha Sullivan, and I hope I pronounced that right, on Pleasant Street in Manlius. Dear Supervisor Theobald and council members, she's a resident of Manlius, directly adjacent to the proposed CVE North 15 megawatt solar project on Dugan Road next to the FM High School. My property directly abuts the proposed facility property. I support the CVE solar project. I have reviewed the site plan and see that the developer has done an excellent job screening views from the surrounding neighborhood, has left green space in the layout to accommodate wildlife corridors, has avoided impacts to wetlands, and has adhered to local zoning laws. I oppose a moratorium on solar energy development in Manlius. We are in the midst of a global climate crisis. Solar energy is a safe, reliable energy source that doesn't pollute air and water. The land behind my house could be developed into residential housing development, changing the community character of this land forever with no benefit to the community. We should do our part to contribute to the goals of the state to meet carbon neutrality and increase renewable energy production. Manlius must do its part like every other community must. Please do not delay taking action against climate change. Stop this moratorium.
I didn't dare cut you off on that.
What?
I didn't dare cut you off. That was good.
I'm trying to project.
That was about 3 minutes.
Okay, Paul Staub asked, why is the town such a popular location for solar farms compared with other towns in the county? Janice Geddes from Mulberry Lane in Manlius says, I fully support solar, but have just a few concerns having to do with zoning. I am concerned about distancing of solar fields from homes and from one another, and also about the size of each. How will this be addressed? What restrictions will be imposed, and how will they be regulated and fully enforced? Can you read Renee's? That's so Renee asked why the applause for Pete Worth was muted, and the owl decided that we did not. So, sorry about that. Retroactive, that was not my decision. Richard Geddes of Mulberry Lane asked, if more and large solar farms are approved, what would the financial impact be on town finances, plus or minus? How would the town ensure adjacent or nearby homeowners are not impacted by sound generated passively by wind and actively by inverters? Will the planning board be considering the importance but intangible impact on the character of the town generally if massive concentrations of solar panels are approved? David Sheridan on Salt Springs Road says this is absurd. Everyone speaking in favor of solar energy isn't dealing with solar farms being in their front yard and devaluing their property. Raquel Parks. I could not make out which company she asked a question. Let's see. My name is Elena Shepherd, and I live on Crestwood Drive in Manlius. I oppose the moratorium. Do not delay in approving solar panel projects. We have a good enough law in place, and the best is the enemy of good. We don't want to risk losing state and other funding rebates. Paul Staub asked if solar farms pay property taxes. Jonathan Levine has lived on Crestwood Drive in Manlius since 2011. The urgency for solar energy is great, and the scrutiny that the solar projects received during the zoning process is already sufficient to protect neighborhood interests. Please do not freeze solar applications for the next 6 months. Instead, please welcome solar project applications immediately. All right, that is the comments.
All right. Very good. Wow, what a night. Okay. Unless,
I like their
yeah, maybe we can, go ahead, Jan.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed? Carried. All right, one last comment I would like to read, and this is from the planning board chairman, Joe Lupia, sent this to me Monday, which I shared with the board today. As you know, the planning board indicated a willingness to support the moratorium on solar projects We understand the desire for a comprehensive town plan, and to that extent, we wish to be in sync with whatever the town develops at its plan. However, I should also point out that I am strongly in favor of solar farms. They are a godsend as a source of clean renewable energy. I have heard a number of objections to solar farms, and I do not believe that those objections support the facts. In that respect, I support the moratorium only to the extent that the town have an opportunity to develop its plan. Signed, Joe Rubio.
That's
Okay,
very
so
helpful.
there's our communication from the planning board. So,
What's left
and
on our agenda for tonight?
what's that?
What's left on the agenda?
Oh, yeah, let's go through that. So we have the highway superintendent, which Rob could not be here tonight. And I believe, I don't think
He didn't have a
he didn't have anything tonight. Planning and development, I can tell you, I've been sending a lot of permits. You know, small things, pools and decks and so on, and some COs, and there's some fireworks going on at Erie Lake sometime, I forgot. It's a wedding. And Tim, you are up, Attorney for Chesky.
I have, speaking of solar farms, I have one item.
Solar farms. We spoke on it for like 3 hours.
Yes.
So we are in the process of collecting escrow for decommissioning plans. And the way our code reads right now is they have to provide us either with a bond or cash equivalent.
Right.
The bonds are really 1 year to 5 year bonds, and I don't want a 1 year or 5 year bond. So we've agreed to, the applicants have agreed to provide us with cash equivalent. So we're going to deposit those escrow equivalents or security. We need to authorize a bank account to allow for those deposits to be made, held in escrow for 15 or 25 years.
So that's another change in our laws. It shouldn't be bond or it has to be cash.
Yeah, we want to change that law.
Or do we want to specify how long?
Yeah, can you write that up?
Where's
please?
that?
Well, it's on a
No, all we're doing is authorizing the town manager to
Open a bank account.
to open up
An escrow bank.
Could I make a motion to authorize the town manager to open up a bank account to hold the escrow payments?
Titled Trusted Agency 3 Solar Deposits.
Yes, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Well, did
Carried.
we have a second?
Yeah, Karen.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm in favor.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Allison, you're good?
Huh?
Okay. The chief is not here tonight, and I don't think he had anything, or he would have been Zooming us, so we're good. Ann, do you have anything for us?
We
Yes,
have
you do.
our,
That's right.
Medicare Part D subsidy and patient. Sorry, it's been a long night. This is we engaged with an accounting firm to provide the actuarial services for the retiree health plan for the Medicare Part D subsidy. We just need approval for the supervisor to sign that agreement. It's our annual agreement, and it is for $2,400.
Need a motion for that.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And I have one other item.
Okay.
We did receive the $5,000 grant for the clean energy communities that Councilor Creasel advocated for. I believe the minutes stated that it was made to spend money to promote initiatives, community solar in Pittsburgh, New York. We do need to make a budget amendment because we need to increase the revenue and the expenditure
Oh, yeah,
for
right.
that.
Okay.
My suggestion at this point in the year would be to increase the revenue. I did not put that down. I should give you that account number, but let's have it come out of the town board 1010-400 line. It'll just be easier to track with some of the other initiatives. 1010-400. Yes.
Okay.
Do we need a motion?
Yes.
So I need to make a motion to put the funds in the 10-400. That is my motion. I'll make a motion to do that.
I'll second it.
That's it, right? Yeah, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Excellent.
So that's $5,000 for the Clean Energy Communities Initiative that Sustainable Manlius has worked so hard for. Money has arrived, and now we can spend it to promote community solar and heat smart CNY and other renewable energy and environmental sustainability initiatives in the town. So that's pretty cool.
Good.
I'm very excited.
That was all you had?
Yes.
Okay. Caitlin, was that your report on sustainability?
I have, this was my report on. I think we're good.
All right, very good. Heather, did you have anything on the comprehensive plan?
Yeah, well, Sarah and I can tell you that, well, there are two things. We're having a meeting with OSIDA and our school district colleagues on Tuesday, August 4th, to talk about the, I think it's Wednesday. Oh, sorry, August 4th,
Yeah,
to talk about the pilot agreement process and also to coordinate with the school district and municipalities to sort of make sure that we're all getting, we're presenting to the applicants similar deals, basically.
So what Heather's saying is that for these large scale solar projects we're talking about, we have a meeting next week on Wednesday with one of the agencies that will help us to get tax revenue from these commercial solar projects. So the solar study group is moving forward. We have a meeting next Wednesday with the school districts and other stakeholders to move that forward.
And then on the 5th, we have our first steering committee meeting for the comprehensive plan. And so we're going to be releasing information about the membership. And we were lucky enough to fill all the spots and to invite the additional applicants to help us have lead focus group conversations on key issues based on their own expertise. And there's still absolutely opportunity for people to engage. So don't hesitate to reach out if you'd like to be involved, but we'll release that information.
And on the transparency thing, all of the materials from the comprehensive plan will be organized and available on the website so that will be on, because that's going to take all year and you can always go back in and check. You don't have to come to meetings to know what's going on.
I also want to say that I heard Emily Ledyard, is it, speak, and I don't know if you're related to the Ledyard dozen Ledyard Canal, but I was thinking about the Ledyard Canal in this moment.
I was
because-
also wondering if she was really.
Okay, so Emily, this is incredible. So you have in your family tree, you have one of the first renewable energy projects in ever, because the canal was hydraulic power to provide power to the mills in the community.
If it weren't for your family, the Village of Fayetteville would not exist. The Village of Fayetteville grew up as a result of the Ledyard Canal.
So what I love is that we in the town of Manlius have a history of embracing renewable energy that we can point to. I just think it's really cool.
The meeting that you're holding with the school district, is there going to be a quorum of the town board there? I don't know.
We talked to Allison about getting.
Getting what?
Yes,
Yeah.
there
Yeah,
will be.
there's a
All right, so
listening
then we
and
need
then
to
the
set, we need to set a date,
Yeah.
a special meeting.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that Allison can, for that day.
I could publish it like I think we talked about it in like a public workshop.
Yeah, it's a public workshop meeting.
Or just-
Okay, but if you're gonna have a majority of the board there, it's a special meeting.
It's a special meeting of the board.
Yes.
Okay.
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 So we make
I'll
a motion to do
time.
that?
Yeah.
Yes.
we can make a motion.
So I'd like to make a motion to
Hold a workshop.
hold a workshop, which it would be the equivalent of a special meeting of the board since we'll have a quorum. On August 4th,
At what time?
5 p.m.?
Is it 5 p.m.?
5 p.m.
6.
And it's at the Manlius Firehouse Community Room.
Yeah, 5 p.m., thank you, 5 p.m. at the Manlius Firehouse.
Can I go ahead and second?
Go ahead, you go.
I will second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, anything else from the board? 'Cause
I have an update on the 457 that you and I spoke about that I wanted to share just briefly with the board so that everyone's on the same page.
All right,
I'll make it 30 seconds or less.
okay, go ahead.
So I spoke today, it's not gonna be 30 seconds, that was a lie. I spoke today with the state representative, Dan Kane, from the New York State, their 457 plan that we've heard so much about. I was on the phone with him for 45 minutes. I briefed the supervisor, and he will be coming to our next meeting to present. And we've asked that all town employees be invited to attend. So really looking forward to getting some more information on what the city plan could provide as another option for the 457.
And as a follow-up, I think right now we'll be meeting with the rest of the police
Yeah.
department and the administrative staff over there.
Did we get a
Possibly
time?
Monday,
Possibly Monday.
maybe one, we'll see.
Okay,
So
well,
that's-
hopefully we get that confirmed
We're
tomorrow.
getting that too, so, all right? That's that. That was about 30 seconds.
I did quicker than I thought.
The only thing I have really is, I think this is probably the biggest crowd we've had since that I've been here, and that's 12 years, you know. Now, before that, I know there were some bigger ones for some other concerns. And it was a good, I'm gonna call it a rally, not a protest, because that's how it was advertised. It was a great rally. You guys were really good, really polite. I thought, in fact, I don't usually do this, but I got a text from my wife, and she said, "Crowd is very respectful." Okay, now that's pretty good. You know? She's gonna be very angry that I just told her. I want to thank everyone for their participation and courtesy during everyone's time speaking up here tonight and giving us an opportunity to listen to a lot. We heard a lot tonight. And so thank you very much for that. And that is all I had.
We
So,
actually did good.
what's that?
We got the ARPA money.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah, I
we
mean-
did. Yeah, we did receive the ARPA money, which was 1.1 million.
It's the first installment, right?
First installment, half of it, and we'll be, I'm
The
going.
American Rescue Plan.
Yeah,
Sorry.
American Rescue
We got
Plan.
the money?
Yeah, that was deposited like last Thursday or Friday.
Great.
It's like, wow, that was nice.
So municipalities all across the country are like, what? And still have no idea what to do
So
with it.
we're looking at all of the directions that we got, that I've received from the Association of Towns to make sure we know how this is supposed to be applied. Okay, it's not a shopping
No,
spree.
it's actually really hard to spend money. I learned that when I worked at the regional planning board.
Oh,
We
yeah.
get grants and they would just be like, we don't know what to do with this.
Right, right. So we'll be working on that over the, well, we have until about a year to spend it all anyway, so we'll be working on that part. But that is really good news and it was surprising. We didn't know. It was questionable, you know, so again, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
The board.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, very good. Thank you.
Good job.